All right, we are live, Driftwood here, and we're about to be covering the SpaceX Flight 8. So let's go ahead and take a look at NASA's space flight. That's what we're going to be watching today.
Loaded with cargo. They can have one land, bring it up, unload it, and load it. I think it's 40 minutes they can do that, which is nuts. That's ridiculous that they can take that much material off a vehicle and load it and then load it again. And Starship does that with cryogenic propellants in the same amount of time, which is just nuts.
Yes, and so just to give a bit of context for what the timeline looks like. So SpaceX, the flight director here in Starbase will look to pull at T minus 1 hour and 15 minutes to verify that all systems are go for prop load for Starship. And then at T minus 40, T minus 45 minutes and 59 seconds, ship LOX load starts at T minus 42 minutes. Ship methane load begins at T minus 41 minutes. Booster methane on the booster load begins, and then at T minus 35 minutes, booster LOX load begins. So it's not quite as, I guess, streamlined as Falcon 9's prop load is, because those are all pretty staggered. But they have to fill each tank a certain way and in a certain order to maintain structural integrity on board the vehicle. So you would not want a fully fueled ship on top of a completely empty and unprepared booster. That would not be ideal.
Yeah, that wouldn't be great, Bob. Not great, Bob.
No, that's not going to be great.
While we're talking about fueling, what about refueling and fuel transfer? Saad wants to know, Ryan, do you think there could be a refueling mission this year, or is that too optimistic?
Ooh, I've you still have to see a ship with the hardware on it for docking to do a refueling demo. It was scheduled this year. I think it's still possible, but in order to kind of make that somewhat possible, they need to have a successful flight here. Like they need to get this ship re-entered, have a good successful re-entry, and whatnot, like so they can move forward with Block 2 and stuff like that. So that's part of what they got to do. I think it's possible. I think it'd be pushing more towards the end of the year, if anything. But we'll have to wait and see.
All right, everybody, welcome to Great Horn Builds Close Encounters with Driftwood. Today we're going to be looking over Starship Flight 8. So this is going to hopefully be the last suborbital test flight. So last time they're sending it up, not going into actual orbit, just doing that short distance flight over to the Atlantic Ocean. Okay, where they're going to be retrieving the Starship, lower body. So the Mechazilla, the big booster. All right, so as the big booster flies up this time, it's going to come back down. They're going to catch it again. And this time, if all goes well, Starship Flight 8 will actually land perfectly. And then we'll go on to Starship Flight 9, which is just around the corner. And, well, hopefully this works. There's been a lot of chatter and talk around this flight and what to expect. A lot of chatter regarding the upgrades made specifically for Flight 8, but I'm going to be leaving the screen here for a little bit. I'm just going to be letting people stay tuned, watch what's happening on NASA spaceflight, and we'll be back 1 hour before the launch today to do some commentary, catch up on some of the latest updates to this flight specifically and spaceflight in general. So it's a Driftwood, Close Encounters. We'll see you soon.
Less variant, but that needs to get out to the moon still. And in terms of, like you said, it's great for low Earth orbit, but not as much for beyond. That goes perfectly into this question from the Rocket Girl, and I'll throw this to you, Max. They're asking, will Starship one day fully replace Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy? And if yes, how much time would be left until the retiring of those two rockets?
Yes. So SpaceX essentially wants to retire Falcon 9 as soon as possible to get Starship flying as often as it can to obviously take all of its payload. So yeah, Starship will eventually replace Falcon 9, but that will not be for quite some time ahead.
Eventually, your side hustle might take off, and you've got some great opportunities to work with some new clients. One problem, though, you need a certificate of insurance to proceed. Don't freak out. Next literally has you covered. You can get a quote in as little as 7 minutes with their app. Safeguard yourself against potential medical bills, damage to clients' property, damage to equipment, even tool theft. Next offers plans as low as $29 a month, flexible payment options, customized policies to reflect exactly the type of work that you perform. Next is capable of issuing a certificate of insurance same day. Click on the ad, fill out a quick questionnaire, and get your free quote. Maybe even get your new insurance policy started today.
If a man really hated ads, here's what he would do. Day 1, he would install Pi on his computer without spending a dime because it's 100% free. Day 2, he realizes how clean and clutter-free his browsing experience has been since he got Pi. He doesn't have to deal with annoying cookie pop-ups or targeted ads. Day 3, he can finally binge YouTube and Twitch without interruption because Pi works on every website.
Starship doesn't have a capsule. Like, if Falcon 9 is very useful in terms of what Dragon can do. Starship's great and all, it is, but like, I mean, to be able to have a capsule like Dragon to either be docked to a space station is a little bit more helpful than Starship, because unless the station is big enough, Starship is actually too big for space stations, which kind of becomes a problem. Just the sheer an issue with it even docking to the ISS for that matter. Because it remember off the top of my head. Unless you
It was, I believe, the vehicle, because the older ones were a lot heavier than the newer ones.
Starship's like double that. Like, that's a lot more mass attached to a station, and you get issues when that happens. I think Falcon 9 is incredibly useful because of its Dragon, and other things. I don't think it'll get retired soon. I think it'll fly into the mid-2030s. Plus, why not try to... Falcon 9 will break the record for Soyuz U, which is like 756 launches by a single rocket. It'll probably break that in like 2 years. I don't know if it'll ever break R7's record of nearly 2,000 launches. Starship will eventually, though, but it'd be cool if Falcon did. But that's a lot of launches left to go to do that. And it's like 1,500 launches they still have to do.
And if we're talking over 150 a year, it doesn't seem that unfeasible to,
No.
by 2035, hit that number. Which, in terms of that, there was another question that I saw that came in. Someone asking, how long until Raptor becomes the most flown engine? Because I feel like there's a slight advantage in the fact that you're flying 34 of them, or sorry, 39 of them for now, potentially 42 of them per launch. So it's going to add up a lot faster than, say, 9 on a Falcon or, you know, different launch vehicles. Ryan, do you have the math on that?
One sec. They've already done 2,000 launches. I don't remember exactly how many beyond 2,000 for the R7, and you times that by 5 because the RD107 and the RD108, I kind of consider them the same, and they kind of have heritage going all the way back, which means that engine alone is flown 10,000 times. In order to hit that number, let's see here. So you got 10,000 divided by 33. Starship would have to fly 303 times, and that's just booster. So you take the full stack, which is currently at 39 engines. And they're going to add, of course, 3 more RBACs.
Wow.
So you take 10,000 divided by 39, you're looking at 256 launches. It won't take that long for Starship to catch up. It won't.
The calculator going.
We're watching
Yeah, literally.
live.
They heard the buttons getting pushed.
Launch number.
Yeah, it won't take it long to catch up to that, but
this will be hopefully the last suborbital flight.
It does, but I think it can do it. I absolutely think it can do it within the next couple of years here. We were mentioning earlier about the fact that this will be the lunar lander, and eventually the goal, of course, is to make Starship crew-rated, human-rated. Max Marpin's wondering, since Starship doesn't have a capsule, how can they safely abort a crewed launch? The answer is, I don't think we know yet, do we?
No.
We don't. That is the $1 million question. If I think the argument SpaceX would like to go for is that if if Starship is reliable enough to fly as they want it to, and they can safely demonstrate that even under an engine nut scenario, that they can still safely make orbit, there has to be some kind of what was the abort scenario for shuttle to come back to the launch site? It was just called RTLS. Yeah, okay. They might have a plan similar to that at some point. It's really tough to say because the design does not take into account or really allow for any sort of abort capsule to eject the crew from the vehicle in the event something goes wrong. So, I mean, we don't know. We honestly don't know. And that is a question, or I'm sure a conversation that SpaceX is having with NASA right now and will have for some time to fly their crew on board at some point, especially for HLS. But yeah, we don't know.
So, assuming Raptor 3 is 300 tons, this is just 300 tons of thrust. This is not anywhere near that, which I think they are getting able to get more out of it. And assuming Starship eventually gets to 2,000 pounds of propellant on board, because I think they'll still extend it. That's a thrust to weight ratio on the ship of 1.35. You get 9 engines running at 300 tons. So if the issue is with the booster, you might be able to hot stage and get a little bit away. But if the issue is with the ship, then I don't know what you do.
Not good.
It's kind of one of those things. Yeah. It's a problem to look into.
And again, it's also worth noting with the RTLS for shuttle, that was absolute worst case scenario. I believe the odds of actually surviving that were estimated to be less than 30%. So it's one of those where you never want to have to do it. That's when it would literally have to wait till the solids ended, separate away, and then do a very hard turn to steer itself back and actually land at the shuttle landing facility at the time. It was a lot of stress on the vehicle. The question was if it would even have enough velocity to do it. It was, yeah. you don't want to do that. Let's just say that. So hopefully they come up with something a little better.
RTLS requires what? Okay, what was the word? Art requires. I'm trying to remember the quote. It's from John Young.
It was continuous miracles interspersed with acts of God, I believe.
Yeah, to RTLS shuttle, basically.
Yeah, not easy. Not great, Bob.
No, not great.
I do want to thank some people for support. As we see, there's that helicopter.
All right, if you're watching Driftwood, we are live today watching Flight 8. That's right, SpaceX plans to launch its 8th test flight of its huge Starship rocket today. All right, so this is amazing. This is going to be one more of those suborbital flights. Hopefully, this will be the last suborbital flight that SpaceX actually launches up, and then hopefully by Flight 9 next time. But let's not get ahead of ourselves too much. But hopefully by Flight 9, they'll have all the bugs worked out, all the kinks worked out, and we will be ready to start seeing some massive launches in great proportion and really see what Starship is capable of doing. It's definitely going to be some dramatic action, as it usually is when we're watching. Anytime the Starship goes up, anytime the boosters go up, I mean, we've got these massive chopsticks, the Mechazilla chopsticks, and it's always interesting to see, are they going to continue to work? Are the boosters going to continue to come down and land somewhere close to those chopsticks so they can grab that booster out of the sky? All right.
A Capcom member, and am I seeing this right? Yes, Papa Hawkeye 4077 becoming a flight engineer. That is the highest level of support that we have here at NSF. That is so unbelievably generous. Thank you for that. So you get all of the perks of literally everything. So all of the pictures and videos that get posted, the Discord access, the pre and post shows for the Flame Trench, all of the members' multi-views, your name at the end of all of the Flame Trenches and NSF lives, and a reserved parking spot in the official NSF parking lot. Where is it? No idea, but once we find it, you'll have a spot. So thank you. We can only do this because of support from people like you, to have this many cameras out there, this many views, to have a whole members multi-view going, to have an entire team at Starbase, and to try and just keep taking what you guys give us and bringing it into improving all of our gear, improving the quality of all of our systems so that you get the best views that we can provide of Starship and everything going on. Also, this is really cool. Jelly saying, shout out to my husband who coded all of those tiles. That's cool. So
Hey, that's cool.
That everything works for him. I'm sure they'll work great. Oh, that's so cool. Bulletin asking, anyone want to see SpaceX produce a Starship variant with Delta wings? Perhaps they could even give it actively cooled heat shield tiles.
Oh no.
Wow. Wow. Too cursed?
Too cursed. For me, at least.
I'm sure someone will now try and make it in KSP.
Yeah, probably.
I kind of want to see it, though.
Where are you?
Yeah. But they may not have the Delta wings, but at least we do have slightly different design on the version 2 of the ship, at least with all of the flaps and everything. Right, Ryan?
Yeah, the forward flaps, they're a little bit slightly different design. They're thinner.
Work today is broken. We're all working in too many disconnected apps, and it's killing team productivity. But for the first time, there's a platform that fixes it by combining everything you need. Projects, chat, and knowledge in one place.
A million pieces. But I can't wait to see these things, how well they work in reentry, because as we all know, they constantly were having issues with burn through on the passive flat fairing. And this should basically solve all those problems. And not only that, they were actually getting too much control with the forward flaps, even dating all the way back to the suborbital hops. Like, they weren't even fully deploying them because they had so much control out of them. So basically, they finally made the change, and they've grown on me. I just say they've grown on me a lot. I really like the look of Block 2.
Same.
Yeah, it seemed very off center at first. It just looked, I don't know, you're right. It did look weird, but the more you see it, the more aesthetically pleasing it is, shall we say. But most important is functionality. And we will find out, hopefully, this flight, how well this new design functions. And of course, one of the major concerns was we saw a lot of burn through on some of the flaps during the version 1 Starship flights. With this, hopefully, we will see less burn through on the flanges and the hinges, basically, between all of these.
Yeah, and even the tiles on the flaps are now pinned on the forward ones. They're not glued on anymore. So it's just a major advancement across the program. I expect the aft flaps will eventually get some upgrades. They just aren't needed at the moment. So
yeah, soon, version 3 maybe.
Yeah.
Timothy Millen with 2 ideas here with some super chats saying, how about an Optimus robot in the payload moving around, then climbing out the Pez door to climb on the back of the ship and ride it down like a dune worm?
Optimus bot EVA. Let's go.
Oh, I am absolutely all for it. And then also with the suggestion of how about incorporating Crew Dragon in the nose of Starship, because then you get escape possibilities.
Oh, goodness gracious.
We're going to start that again.
Oh, gosh.
I'll just say this. The top half of that nose cone is pretty vital to the functionality of that Starship.
No, it's not. Not at all.
No, it's not. No, it's not. No. Okay. For those of you not aware, the top half of that nose cone includes both header tanks, so the LOX and the methane header tanks, all the CLPVs for engine restarts, for pressurization and stuff, for all that. It includes the flat motors, as well as the new bracing for the forward flaps. There is a ton of stuff that's up there, and you just can't replace that. So, yep.
Wow, look at all the reporters out there today.
As cool as that would be, but nope, it's got to stay with that design.
Did they just released a rollback closure for Booster 15?
What?
I think they did. Yeah, on March 5th, pad to factory between 12 a.m. and 4 a.m.
Oh my God.
Yeah, they did.
As you do,
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's like
Babe.
This is the SpaceX equivalent of Babe Ruth calling a shot, basically.
Yeah, right. Like, we're gonna land this thing. It's rolling back March 5th. It's gonna do it. To be tomorrow night at this rate, it'd roll back.
So if there ever was any expectation, so remember how earlier I was saying that like SpaceX at this point expects to recover boosters now after flight. This is like the prime example of that. Like they are, it's an expectation at this point. It isn't, oh, we'll see. Like they fully expect to.
And the whole team is literally ready to go. So if anyone looks in the ring yard next to the factory, they have 2 windy lifts ready to go. They have a couple JOGs ready to go, and they have the booster transport stand all together, ready to go to the pad to basically take the FTS out, get the booster off the pad onto the transport stand, and get it back into the Mega Bay as quick as they can. So I think they're gonna try to test this. So, I mean, if I think here, the booster will land back, assuming it goes at 5:30, it'll land back at like 5:40 p.m. If they do follow that road closure, it'll be off the pad within less than 36 hours. It'll be out of the launch site.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Optimism there, which isn't a bad thing. So, in terms of road closures, that will be a temporary one, as you mentioned, March 5th, 12 to 4 a.m. But For right now, Max, where are we at in regards to current road closures for the flight itself?
Well, as you can see, there are obviously still vehicles at the pad, so the full evac has not come into play yet. But we have seen some tank farm activity picking up, so that is a strong indicator that they are either ahead of schedule or on schedule, and we should be seeing the cars cleared out of the launch complex, hopefully within the next hour or so. Last we heard from the sheriff, the hard road closure up towards Richardson Road, which is right off of Highway 4, about maybe a mile west of the production site. That hard cutoff will be around 2:30 p.m. That was the latest info we got from the sheriff. So, but of course, beyond that, it's whoever needs to be there at this point. SpaceX and the sheriff began clearing people out from the dunes and anywhere else around the pad around 10:30 this morning. So things are accelerating, I guess we could say. Like things, I'm genuinely surprised. It's already almost 1:30 at this point. It seems like 10 minutes ago it was 10:30, and we were just beginning this stint. But yeah, we should be seeing all like a full evac of the pad, hopefully within the next hour or so.
That is unbelievable right now.
Yeah, time is ticking away pretty quickly now.
You're not kidding. And for this 8th flight of Starship Booster 15, Ship 34, Ryan, how many bananas are on board this flight?
Shouldn't be any bananas, just Starlink dummies.
Not with that attitude.
I mean, there could be. There definitely could be. I mean, it's SpaceX. Who knows what they put in there? But, you know.
Yeah. For those who don't remember, Ship, I believe it was, what was that, 31 that had it? That had a banana inside the payload bay and
yes, Flight 6.
Yeah, and a banana sticker on the side of it, a peanut butter jelly time dancing banana sticker.
Indeed.
Peanut butter jelly time.
It still irks. It's still it's frustrating how that's the one patch that deviates from the rest of their designs. Like that still irks me.
It was the last Block 1 because there are no more Block 1 starships anymore, and it's because Ship 32 is scrapped, so there's no more. And no, Ship 20 is not a Block 1. But yeah, that's. I kind of wish they had kept at least one around just to, you know, here's a Block 1 versus like, oh, maybe a Block 4 in like 10 years or something like that.
Wow. Yeah. That was a banana for scale 1. SpaceX had a Chiquita banana style patch, which was hysterical. So no bananas for scale, as mentioned though. The 4 Dumbelink satellites, the sort of Starlink V2 experimental, not operational satellites to test the deployment mechanism. And I hope that at least one of those will have a camera on it that will be able to show the ship in space from afar. That would be awesome.
That would be insane. Like that visual alone, it would just be spectacular. Like, please. Please, SpaceX, please.
Which, do we know? Are there any stickers, decals, Max, or anything on this ship?
So, not to the extent that we've seen with the Block 1 ships, especially with Flight 5 and Flight 6, where we normally saw the logo of either S-35 or S-36. And then for Flight 5, it was the Mechazilla logo. And then on Flight 6, of course, it was the banana. So there is not any of that, unfortunately, on Ship 33 or Ship 34, which is hopefully flying today. But there are little Easter eggs. So if you look at the non-heat shield side of the forward flaps, you will see a tiny little like Dragon capsule sticker, or just what? Go ahead, Ryan.
Looks like we have pad clear.
Oh, we were just talking about that.
There were last cars looked like they'd left D3, the D2 gate, and I think we've got full pad clear now. So, tank farming to spool up and let's go.
Let's go, baby.
Let's go.
The Dragon stickers, by the way, were on Ship 33. And there
And
was
also-
a Mechazilla sticker.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Alex in the back channel correcting us, or correcting me, I should say, there were stickers also on Ship 33 as well. So, but this time there just appears to be those little dragon Easter eggs on the forward flaps right near the hinges.
So yeah, no stickers that we're aware of, at least besides that. We'll see what happens on payload deploy.
Yeah, no kidding.
Josh Schulten saying, what will the first Starship be named? Possibly Enterprise? Ooh, that's
Take
not a bad
Enterprise.
idea.
That's a really good question. But okay, but like another question: what dictates that a starship should be named?
Crude.
Like, what factors at play?
Crude
Like,
ship.
is it crude or is it like HLS? Is it like the first operational one? Like,
I think it should be HLS and crewed starships are named. I think is what they should do. I honestly want the first starship to Mars with people on board to be named Enterprise.
yeah,
It's
Yes.
I might be a little bit biased, but I want it to be named Enterprise. I mean, I'm also down for like Yorktown, Saratoga. You know, going through those kinds of names. Just or the Daedalus, or you know, just picking from sci-fi shows at this point. But you know, or hey, name one the Battlestar Galactica. I don't know. Let's have some fun with it.
the
Endeavor?
right stuff, maybe.
And of course they use all the shuttle names too, because why not?
Yeah, exactly. Got to have an Endeavor in there. Just saying.
Yeah.
But
It's
I feel
Spaceball One.
like
Wait, what?
someone said,
Do you know what's really fun? Making a website on Wix.
Hey, we're How Ridiculous, 3 childhood friends and digital content creators that do epic stuff from Perth, Australia.
We've got about 50 million followers. We're in the billions of views, and we're a small team. And we always felt like our content was all about entertainment and being fun, but there was also this, sort of professional business side. One of the things that we knew was
I was having a conversation with a friend not that long ago, and actually, SpaceX does not refer to any of the dragons as Endeavor or Resilience or Endurance. They're all just Dragon. Like, they don't even the their numbers. Like, they just call it Dragon. They don't use the names anywhere in there, which I find somewhat disappointing. But it's also like, okay, that's just for us, I guess, or the
"Get it,"
crew.
but
But I just want to see like Enterprise or Normandy or the Pillar of Autumn on the side of the ship. I mean, come on, it would look cool. But can't have everything.
yeah,
Elysium.
I mean, there's a lot of good names out there you could put, and they're going to make a lot of ships. So
oh yeah, Serenity. If you want to go Firefly,
there you go.
Defiant,
Babylon 5.
Plaid. They've gone to Plaid. Some good names in there.
Ooh, I have one. R2D2.
A good one too. There's a lot of good ones. It's a lot of good
Really
names.
is. Fun question. Here's a slightly more serious question, though. Kevin wants to know, has Starbase been officially approved for full flight duties, or will they still need the CAPE and or official approval for Starbase? Ryan?
So they can. I mean, they're flying full flights right now. That's all I'm going to say. They don't have. They're limited. I think they're at the limit of 10 at the moment. The tiered environmental assessment that's currently undergoing review after public comments and the draft was released is to up Starbase to 25 launches in a year. That'll be out of both of those pads. Now, I'm trying to remember all the ones split up between 39A, 37, and that, but I know the total between the 2 environmental impact statements that are going on plus the tiered environmental assessment will be 146 total launches between all 3 pads. The launch site here, and then the 2 pads are the other pads that they're building. So they need the CAPE for launch cadence. They can't do it all out of here. So yeah, they'll have to get that. still.
And also from Florida, so here in Starbase, they are limited as to what inclinations they can fly at. Whereas when they're in Florida, they can fly northeast, they can fly directly east. They could even fly polar if they wanted to. They can't do any of that here in Starbase because of the populated areas over in Florida across the Gulf and also south of here in Mexico. So they have to essentially squeeze Starship through a window between, I guess, Cuba and Florida at this point. So they have like essentially almost just one inclination that they can fly at, or a very small window that they can fly Starship with. So it's likely that Starbase will remain an R&D and test flight facility once the Cape becomes operational.
Plus, they can do tanker flights out of here with depots, because that shouldn't really matter. You should be able to get that inclination. They could do a really ridiculous dog leg out of here.
Oh my god, a Starship dog leg would be insane.
The amount at which that would have to curve is
right.
That's what's the Japanese rocket that does that? Is that an
H3? I was just gonna say like imagine Starship doing an H3. That would be absolutely nuts.
That would be nuts. Yeah.
I mean, that's pushing gimbal to the limit on these Raptors, that's for sure.
Yeah, as Alex is saying, they could fly between Yucatan and Cuba, which would be 33 degrees, so Starlink. They can still do that out of here without having to get, there are corridors they can do. They could try to do dog legs if they really wanted to. Granted, you're going to lose a lot of performance doing that. Plus, trying to bring the booster back would be kind of fun for that too. But they can figure it out. It's not like they can't. So yeah.
And by the way, dogleg, for those unaware, that is when a rocket starts to go straight out and then has to do a sharp turn. If you were to draw it out with the line, it kind of looks like when a dog is sleeping, how their leg is all curled up. That is why it is called a dog leg, and it would have to do a hard turn there. Let's see. Here's one from TechRan who's asking, any sign of the aft section of a Starship with landing legs? You'd think they want to start testing landing legs by now for HLS. Max, have we seen anything down there? I don't think so yet.
I don't think so. Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, but no, we have not seen anything that would indicate that they have any landing leg hardware around or at least outside in any of the megabays. So that will be a thing for HLS and eventually versions of ship that are optimized for Mars travel. But that is at least a year and a half, 2 years out, the earliest. So not yet.
I haven't seen anything. That doesn't mean that there isn't something inside Star Factory we can't see, but as far as I know, they don't have anything.
Yes.
Yeah.
Here's a question, just going back to what we were discussing a moment ago. Corrupted is wondering, what will the future of Starbase look like once the Cape is operational? So prognostication time, as Gene was saying earlier. Would it be cheaper to launch ships and land in the Cape, or would they transport them via road or ship? So basically, what happens to Starbase once Cape Starship is up and running?
They still fly out of it. They can do Starlink missions. They can do tanker missions out of here. So there's still a use for it. I mean, they can get the inclination to do tanker missions. I love unicorn. That's not hard. You just got to set the depot in the right spot, and whatnot. And then on top of that, I mean, they can still produce ships out of here, especially once they build a gigabay. And then say they do build a pad at Vandenberg, or they build a pad at they build the pads at the Cape. Basically, you launch a full stack and you have the ship perform a mission, except for the ship doesn't land back at Boca where it launched from. It lands back at the Cape. They can do that. Basically, ferry or the funnier thing would be kind of like what you do if you have a maintenance issue, or if you just need to reposition an aircraft, you just ferry it empty. Maybe you don't launch anything at all, and you just launch the ship empty and ferry it to another launch site. They could be doing things like that. Boosters are a little bit harder because those can't really be ferried between launch sites. You kind of have to build them, and wherever they're built, they're kind of stuck to that launch site unless you can find a way to barge them over. which my guess is they will figure out a way to do that if they need to transfer boosters someplace. But in terms, I think Boca will just become a place where they'll still be building stuff. I think it'll be the main R&D spot. Like the Cape will be for a lot of operational flights, but say they want to come up with, a new heat shield design, or they find some wacky thing they want to try on a ship or booster. Well, you make that in Starbase and you launch out of a pad there, either and maybe do it on a suborbital track, and you use the same suborbital track you've been using and just dunk it in the Indian Ocean. You try to test something. I could absolutely see Starbase being used for that. So, because they have all their testing infrastructure here, you might as well use it, So
you're saying point to point?
I mean, you could call it point to point, yeah, with repositioning chips.
Yeah, that booster is not making it across the Gulf under its own power.
No. Maybe if you fully fill it, stick a nose cone on it and try.
I was just gonna say that. Can you imagine? Like, that would be
right.
Oh my god, that would be insane.
I don't know how far the booster could make it with a nose cone on it, fully loaded, and you fire it. I actually don't know how far it could make it. So
as far as your heart desires.
The problem is, though, the altitude at which you're going to get at. I don't know if the booster survives that re-entry compared to what it already has to, because you probably need a higher altitude to do that shot over.
Well, at that point, they'll be so assuming that that's even possible. You would probably need the V3 version of the booster with more prop, or as much prop as possible. And at that point, they'll be using the Raptor 3s, which will be a lot more resistant to any heating or negative effects from peak heating and reentry. So, but whether or not that they'll be able to withstand that much heating from that much more velocity and that much more altitude, I highly doubt it. But yeah, I don't know. It could go either way, but probably not.
That'd be a good idea to make a video about point to point.
It is a good idea. I wonder where. Yeah, I wonder.
Yeah, I wonder if only something like that was in the works.
Yeah, if only.
Let's see here. Let me take a moment to thank some people. Melody, thank you for becoming a Red Team member. Manic, thank you for becoming a Pad Rat member. Corrupted, thank you for becoming a Pad Rat member as well. Jeff Frishoff gifting 10 Red Team memberships. Thank you so much for doing that. Mark, thank you for becoming a Red Team member. Mike, thank you for becoming a Pad Rat member. 13, thank you for becoming a Pad Rat member. Roger, thank you as well, becoming a Pad Rat member. Andy, Engineer, also Pad Rat. Matthew, thank you for becoming a member as well. And then we have 3 here. We've got Charles becoming a Capcom member. Capcom and above getting that Discord access as well. Thank you so much for that level of support. Then we go one step up in support level. Martin becoming a launch director.
You want high performance tools, long lasting tools, affordable tools. You want Harbor Freight tools. Whatever you do, do it for less at Harbor Freight. Save even more at this weekend's parking lot sale.
It is so damn beautiful.
Aren't bad guys.
I mean, we can paint it like the space shuttle, but that's it. Kenneth saying thank you for keeping up to date with Starship. You're welcome. Schrodinger's chat. First off, brilliant name. Second, Max, if cloud cover persists at launch, here's hoping SpaceX will give us continuous onboard views. That is true. So where are we at weather-wise, I've seen a bunch of people asking questions. What's it like where you are at
Bill,
Starbase?
it's cloudy outside.
Yeah, so for those just tuning in, we are here over at our riverside. I will be migrating over to the Rocket Ranch outpost when the time comes, and I can hop off, or once we are wrapped up with the stakeout stream here. But as Adam had mentioned earlier in his bit about the forecast, yeah, the clouds that were forecasted to roll in at about around noon have arrived, and they are. Yeah, I would say it feels like more than 70% cloud cover. Like it's 100% cloud cover, unfortunately. The cloud deck doesn't seem that low, so hopefully we won't lose it after, I don't know, 5 or 10 seconds. Hopefully we'll
If
have
you're
it for
watching,
longer
you
than that.
think
But
that they're going to cancel
yeah, so the clouds have arrived.
launch
It is
deck,
completely
the order
overcasted
moved
right
in.
now,
If you
as you
think
can
they're
see
gonna
from the
cancel the
views.
launch,
It is very gray, unfortunately, and
throw
it
it
is
in the chat.
forecasted to remain this
Love to
way
hear what you
throughout
have
the
to
launch
say.
window today. The other big thing to keep to keep an eye on today is the winds, which should be gusting around 20-25 miles an hour tops. At least that's what the forecast says. Currently, it's a little bit breezy right now, but it doesn't feel too bad. But once you get into the upper levels, I'm sure that is when Starship becomes more vulnerable to the wind flow, because it is
What about the
aerodynamically unstable with the flaps being on top of the ship, which is obviously stacked on top of the booster. So yeah, the cloud cover itself is not a major weather concern for today. It is more so with the winds. But as we have seen so far, SpaceX seems to be pushing ahead with operations, as we have just seen, with a complete pad clear, which should mean the tank farm should be spooling up even more very soon, and we should be getting into prop load at around T-minus 45 minutes. But seems like, even though that's 3 hours away and it seems kind of far, that will be here before you know it. Trust us. But yes, it will be like this for pretty much the rest of the day, unfortunately.
Yeah, but as you mentioned, not a constraint for launch, just a constraint for a strain on our eyes, mainly. So a constraint.
Correct. It's not visually ideal, I'll put it that way.
Wow, I got a max laugh from a pun. Mark the date and time, folks. It's a first. Mike and Marilyn getting their Flight 8 patch and mug. Go Starship. Shiloh, first tanker, Starship, ship 26A.
Ugh.
No.
Yes, I dig it. Let's do it.
Let ship 26 rest in pieces, okay?
That doesn't
Ship 26.
That doesn't deserve the Dash A designation at all.
That ship was destined for glory, and SpaceX robbed us of it.
Robbed us.
Robbed us.
Okay.
No, they saved us by destroying it.
No, they robbed us. It's different. They should have flown it and let it burn up in the atmosphere and let it go out like a Viking's funeral. Oh my God, that would have been spectacular.
Yep. For those who don't know, by the way, Ship 26 was a ship that they designed. They did a bunch of cryo and engine testing with it, but it didn't have any of the flaps, didn't have any of the tiles. It was a giant silver bullet-looking ship that was ugly compared to the others, and so they scrapped it and never flew it, as it should have been, despite people literally making songs commemorating it.
Also, those stringers on there, they didn't mean anything special. Trust me. They didn't mean anything special.
They didn't mean anything special.
Let's see here. Well, they did some engine testing with Ship 26, and speaking of engines, Misty's wondering, when do we think Raptor 3 will be added to the ship? Ryan, what do you think?
Guess is as good as mine. Honestly, we don't. Ever since SpaceX announced it, all we've seen them do is blow a bunch of them up at McGregor, and that's about it. Test them and blow them up. I don't know when it's going to be ready.
Which,
I'm hoping
reminder, you can watch them blow up at McGregor Live 24/7 here at NSF.
There you go.
What's your prediction then? Well, if you had to guess.
I would expect they would go on ship the same time you get a Block 2. I would guess it's going to be like a Block 2.5 ship with basically a Block 2 booster with it. So the first full Block 2 stack on Pad B, whenever that is this year. And heck, they may even do 9 engines on that particular ship. I really don't know what they're going to do. Because I've been thinking, like, I think they're going to prove out Block 2, and then they'll create like a Block 2.5, Block 3, and it'll basically be slightly extended with 9 engines or something like that, just to get that more performance out of it once they know like their operational systems are good to go. But like if that's going to be Raptor 3, we'll see. It probably will be, but maybe end of this year.
Hey, everybody.
Maybe. I mean, that would be great to see. And after seeing it earlier when they revealed it, the whole best part, no part thing, I can't wait to see the efficiency at which they pump those out. Here's a question from ahead, kind of prognostication again.
All right, if
I'll
you're
start with you, Matt.
watching, this
Do you
is
think
the
we'll ever see
prequel to
same-day
Launch 8.
reuse like we saw in the
Chat is
original
open.
CGI concept?
Feel free to join. Throw in some comments.
Prognostication. That's a word. Eventually, that's the goal. And honestly, with how Starship is being designed,
All right, it looks like we had a little bit of a unstable
I can't think right now.
connection there for a brief second, but
Caesar just made everyone burgers here over at River, and I just tried scarfing one, so my brain's elsewhere. But yes, I do, and that is ultimately what Starship is going to be, or is its designing is evolving for that to be a possibility, and that is of course their goal eventually with the
all right,
the
if you
super
are
high
one of
launch
those
cadence
continuous
with
watchers
Starship.
of Starship, and it just
I know
blows
he
your
also
imagination
Elon at some
Elon
point
Musk
also
has
wanted
been able
to
to
recover
work
a Falcon
through
9
his
and
team in
refly it
such
within
a
24 hours.
short period
That
of
obviously
time,
has not happened,
especially in
and given
comparison to
the priority
the
of
amount of time we've actually
that
had
the Starship
viable,
has
usable
now, I don't
rockets
think we're going to see that with Falcon 9
in such a
anytime
short
soon,
period
nor
of
is there
time
really
actually
the
be able
demand
to
for it at the
launch
moment,
something of
unfortunately.
this size and then bring it back and catch it
But I do
between
believe Starship will
something
get there. Give it
like
probably,
chopsticks.
oh boy, that's
Feel free
probably
to
like
throw it
a
in the chat.
4 year plus out thing, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, Falcon 9 isn't even at that point yet. You've had multiple flights in a day from different pads, but even their shortest turnaround time is still about
Be
3
right back. I
days
need to
between
grab my cup of
launches.
coffee.
I know Falcon 9 wasn't meant to have a cadence of same day, but I know the goal at least is to be able to do every day or every other day as they move onward. Here's one. J VideoTube was wondering, Ryan, why is there no paint on the OLM this time? Any ideas? I know we've seen them repaint it over and over again after previous flights.
Well, I think SpaceX just wants to see how the OLM fares with no paint. It's not like it's entirely required. It just provides a little bit more protection. Maybe they're just like, well, let's see what happens. So they're going to see what happens.
There you go. Wait and see. Bulletin with the idea here of why not a fully reusable Starship with a 9-meter interplanetary capsule as its third stage? Would that avoid the need for refueling?
How are you planning on bringing that capsule home?
We are
That's
back
the
with
other
a cup of
question.
coffee.
Well, also, how do you make it interplanetary? Starship still has to launch it into space. And unless it's got fuel of its own, I mean, you could put a third stage inside Starship and make that as like a tug, but I don't know if you can do a 9-meter capsule to do it, because you also have to remember you're not going to be able to put 9-meter payloads in Starship. It may be 8. So, because you can't actually use the full 9.
How epic would that be, though? A 9-meter capsule. That would be incredible.
Gigantic.
That would be incredible.
Yeah, it's huge. I don't think they'll do it, though.
Not with that attitude, Ryan.
So do you guys think this is just the beginning?
The idea of the imagery coming to mind
is it going to
would be
get way
so
bigger?
cool.
Oh, yeah. 100%. And hopefully will be also today from the Starship dummies, assuming one of them has a camera on them.
Oh, I hope they have
And if
one.
you're
I mean,
looking to join the chat,
SpaceX
you
had to have
must
thought about that.
be
Like, there has to
subscribed.
be
You
a
gotta
camera on one of
subscribed
them.
for
Like,
at least
there
1
has
minute.
to be one.
The thing
You've been
is,
subscribed for
I'm
1
trying
minute.
to remember.
Feel
I
free
think
to join
they
the chat.
need a separate
Thanks
FCC
for
license to do something like that. Like to put a camera on something you're going to deploy. Granted, it won't it'll re-enter with the ship basically, but do they need an FCC license for that? Because if they do, they don't have one. They don't have one to put a camera on one of those downlinks.
Maybe that's only needed if it's staying in orbit. But obviously, it's not staying in orbit. It'll be re-entering with ship.
Yeah, but when I've looked at those things, they're literally a steel bar with a plate of steel attached to it. Is basically all it is.
How far along
I mean,
the tank
maybe,
farm has
but
come.
I don't
If
think
you
it
remember,
is.
everything
We'll
was
see, though, I
laying
guess.
down horizontal
Have
a few
faith,
years
Ryan.
ago.
They're
We
capable
will
of
Over
one
last
of
year,
Because I will
and
say,
then we
if
had
they
that
do
first
that,
launch that just
and
totally
the battery
massacred
lasts long
the
enough,
tank
you're
system.
then
You can see the
watching
dents,
from behind
all the
as the
parts
ship
and rocks and concrete flying
re-enters.
off. And
You see the
now
plasma field
you've
around
got
the
your
ship.
vertical upright tank
Like
farm.
I wasn't even thinking about that. I
And
was
you've
just
got
thinking
your
about
shielding
deploying.
and everything else seems
I was
to have
just
done
like
the job.
I was just talking about having a field of view just as it left the payload bay and showing Starship as a whole over Earth. You know, like that's all I want to see. I'm sure many others too.
If it's transmitting, I think it needs a license though. So yeah.
If it's transmitting, I think it needs a license. And who's saying they don't have that? Maybe behind the scenes they're working on it, but that would be very cool. Or deploy now, ask questions later.
I mean, no comment.
Well, yeah, that hasn't gone well for SpaceX in the past. But
me.
Welcome to the Muppet Show, folks. Joined by Geeker on comms.
Muppet Show. Hey, tank farm, by the way, it's starting to spool up.
It is definitely starting to spool up here. So,
hey guys, the tank farm's spooling up.
I don't know.
Is it?
Volume check.
Anyway, you can see there. You also have the roadblocks up there in the corner. Max, what are the next big events coming up as we approach 3.5 hours until the opening of the launch window?
So we essentially need to see all of the propellant lines both up the tower and around the orbital launch mount start to begin to be chilled down, and that will become obvious when they all start to not glow, but they will all become very white, and we will see vapor coming off of them as well, similar to what we are seeing from the tank farm now, obviously just smaller because the pipes are smaller. That is all in preparation to get all the plumbing conditioned down to cryogenic temperatures to allow LOX and liquid methane to flow both into the ship and the booster. We will see either go or no go received at around T-minus 1 hour and 15 minutes and change, depending on what the flight director dictates, whether or not they are there go for prop load or not. And following that, they will begin prop load operations at T-minus 45 minutes. So a lot to keep an eye out for. And I think the next thing we should see is the recondenser. Ryan, question mark?
Well, they don't have a recondenser vent anymore. That's kind of all routed through the Pope vent. Yeah, no, they removed those tanks from the tank farm and removed the vent along with it. They do things a little bit differently now, but we're basically just going to see a bunch of vapors coming out of the vaporizers here as they start to get frosty and they start to build up pressure, and slowly you'll see the lines that are going from the tanks to the pumps. You'll see them start to get frosty. That's not going to happen yet. They're still kind of conditioning things, getting things spooled up. You'll probably see those lines start to get frosty in maybe an hour and a half, maybe hour and a half. Once they really start chilling those all the way down, and the pumps get chilled down, subcoolers get chilled down, and then things start going once they start pumping things to the pad and the tower and whatnot. And they chill down those lines. So we're in the slow startup of things. You won't really see a lot of major stuff happen for a little bit, but they're still going. So
that's the important thing. And at this point, we're continuing towards that opening of the 1 hour long launch window. FMC, kind of along those lines, as we take a look at those very dark clouds rolling through, as of right now, does not seem to be a weather constraint with those type of clouds. One of the main concerns is the winds. But FMC putting it in a very polite way. If we get a wet dress rehearsal today, Ryan, can Starship launch in 24 hours? Pretty sure that's a new feature they have now with this upgraded tank farm.
Yeah, if they end up fully filling the thing and then scrubbing and having to detank, they definitely can go right away. They have the capability to go again tomorrow. They can bring in some stuff to refuel it, but they should still have enough left over to try again tomorrow afternoon. But as Adam was saying, a front starts moving in, and I think so. I think they want to just try to get this thing off today because the weather over the course of the rest of the week is still pretty windy, and while it may be sunny, it may not be great for launch. So they may just try to go if they can find that window today in that 1 hour, they'll try for it.
Right. As beautiful as the views are and everything like that, most of the data, a majority of the data they're collecting is gathered through numbers, not so much visuals. Yes, they have plenty of upgraded cameras on board the boosters and especially on the ship, and that camera work will be very helpful for studying the burn through on the upgraded flap design. But otherwise, in terms of being able to see the launch, it is not a requirement. Even for these test flights, they can still learn a lot just based off of the data, even if they can only see ground views for a couple of seconds. Let me thank a couple more people here. Corey Lene saying a good name for Starship, Agamemnon. Nice. JP Weeb, thank you for becoming a Padrat member. Ninja Decimator saying someone build the booster in KSP. Saying someone build the booster in KSP with a nose cone and see if it's possible. Do it.
Do it, please. Yes, somebody do that, please.
Nibbles saying
Have you ever noticed how a simple coat of paint can protect your house from the elements? As painters, we're not just adding colors to your home.
We still can't stop talking about it.
That was for the Rocket Lab's 50th Electron flight.
That is correct.
Jeremy, what are the chances we get this audio and the launch stream audio over the members multi-view? I think the whole point of that members multi-view is to have an alternate way of just watching with a little bit of ambient sound and flip through all of the cameras that we have, which is a members perk, by the way, for anyone that becomes a member. You have our multi-view where there's over a dozen cameras rotating through, and it will only grow as we get closer to launch.
It's like they hear so many cameras.
Peter saying the patches are getting better every time. Thank you. Shout out to Jacques again, who did the Flight 8 patch for this. Eric Frazier, as we were talking about the Muppets, Phenomena. It's now stuck in everyone's head. There you go. Matt PD, surely there's a license-free way to send video, VDL2 or the like. Alex in the back channel pointing out that they can technically do local comms as long as it just goes back to ship 34, and then ship 34 is the one beaming the video back, then technically they can get away with it.
So, maybe. We'll see.
So you're telling me there's a oh, wait, wrong rocket.
For those who don't know, that was the name of New Glenn's first launch vehicles. You're telling me there's a chance.
So actually, guys, quick update. I'm just looking over towards Highway 4 right now.
Yes.
Big train of cars coming past Richardson going westbound, leaving the production site. So it looks like they're starting to get all non-essential people cleared out from that area now, too.
That is great news. Everything proceeding on schedule. 3 hours, 30 minutes now until the opening of that window. And Metabricks with a great question. And Max, I'll throw this one to you. What needs to happen for the any T minus to turn into T minus? So can you kind of go over the clocks?
The any T minus? Oh, okay. I didn't. I thought you were going to say L minus. Well, so I was like, any T minus? You mean net minus?
Yeah, sorry. That's like me with saying NET and net versus VAB and VAB. Just saying.
No.
Exactly.
Nobody says VAB. Nuh-uh.
Right, and no one says. Very few people say net. Same thing. So
That's not true at all. That's not true at all. I say net all the time, and so do my friends. We all say net.
Yeah,
nobody says NET. This and
NET. What are you, weird?
Yes, Sawyer.
Fine, Issa. Okay, go ahead. What's the difference?
Issa's still good too.
With NET and T minus.
So NET stands for no earlier than. And so that is an indicator as to the window opening at 5:30 p.m. local time here in Texas, which is the Central Standard Time here in the U.S. So that is the earliest time that Starship can fly, and that is the current T0 they are targeting. So as to when, I mean, it could technically remain net. Well, I'm trying to think now when that would turn to T. Would
Once
that be
we
when,
have confirmation of the
Yeah.
exact T0.
Yeah.
That's
So
what I would say.
and that could be, that will have to come directly from SpaceX. We are not exactly sure when that will be, but we presume it'll be after their live stream starts. That is when most of the information comes out. So hopefully before prop load or around prop load, even though Starship does have the ability to hold in the count, unlike Falcon 9. So we're hoping soon, but that is all up to SpaceX, and we'll have to wait and see.
Yes, and that's also why we say that no earlier than, because it is a 1 hour launch window. So
Correct.
it could target any time within those 60 minutes. So that's why we put the earliest possible T0 time, which is that 5:30 p.m. Central, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, 3.5 hours from now.
Just saw somebody in chat saying that is net 2:30 a.m. their time. Welcome to our world.
Welcome to those late night Starlinks.
Welcome to those late night Starlinks, baby.
They do be hitting different.
They do indeed.
Cannot wait until you get a bunch of the late night Starship Starlinks just kind of going out of the cake. Those will be hitting different.
Like I'm just excited to see the first nighttime Starship launch. Like that's what I'm excited about. Because obviously methane burns a lot differently and looks a lot differently when it's being burned compared to RP1 or solids. So it's going to be a lot dimmer, but surely it's going to be a lot more vibrant in terms of its color. That's going to be awesome. I can't wait. But hopefully that happens soon.
Hopefully. And a reminder, at NASA Spaceflight, if you have questions, we're going through. I promise we are reading them and answering them, despite all the people making fun of my NET.
Net.
Fiona wants to know, with the updated heat shield and everything for ship 34, there are a lot of tiles that are removed. Fiona's wondering, where are the removed tiles on the ship? Ryan?
They're all over the place. They're all over the tank section going all the way up. They're all over the nose cone. They're on the flap fairings and the flaps themselves, both forward and aft flaps. They're in just locations that SpaceX wants to test for what happens when they lose a tile there, just to make sure nothing else happens. So that's basically what it is. It's just for testing locations, and they're just all over the place. So if you like to take an entire shot of the back of 34 and 33, you'll notice they're basically like laid out in a grid pattern, all taken off. So,
Yep, and they hope to get a lot of data of, can they possibly remove tiles from different parts of the vehicle in future designs? Because as we always say, the best part is no part, and that saves mass. And the more mass you save on the vehicle, that's the more mass that you can actually carry up and deploy in space. That helicopter's still coming by there. We see that. Max, what is that chopper that keeps landing by our camera?
That's essentially just for range safety, to make sure all personnel are where they need to be and that there aren't any stragglers, either on land or over the water. The unfortunate part about the timing around March for any Starship activity is we are approaching spring break here in Starbase and South Padre Island, which is a spring break hotspot. So it is a lot of extra work for the Coast Guard and everyone else who is keeping watch on the waters around the launch pad, making sure there are no wayward boats veering into the zone and causing issues, or worst case scenario, the S word, which I will not say at this point. So that is essentially what that's for, and just keeping people where they need to be and out of where they don't need to be.
Exactly. Also, by the way, someone did point out, Ryan, where are the missing tiles? They're not on the ship. That's where they are.
Wow.
That was me. I got to give props to John and Pat for that one. That was good.
Pun token awarded.
Yes. Let's see. Dave Marsh, thank you for becoming a Pad Rat member. D-Dubs, Elon mentioned something like to tweet apparently regarding cameras on dummy links. We'll have to see. Fingers crossed for that.
Hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge. Ryan, do you want to place a wager on that one? Like $5?
Whether or not they've got, I mean, What
We have witnesses.
you're going for it. What? Wait.
We here at NSF do not promote gambling of any kind.
We do not. This is a friendly wager between. I don't even know if we're friends or not, Ryan. Are we friends?
What? How's that a question, Max? How's that a question?
Ouch. I'm just feeling spicy. Sorry.
Man. Wow. Right.
Well, you two fire it in there. I'm gonna keep going here. Let's see. Michael, thank you for becoming a Capcom member. Capcom and above gets access to the Discord as mentioned. LSR saying, let's go Starship, ! Socials, which happy birthday to LSR. LSR is part of our social media team here at NSF. Everyone in chat, please make sure to wish LSR a very happy birthday. And the other way to celebrate LSR's birthday is by checking out all of the NSF socials. We are on Facebook, Instagram, X/Twitter, whichever you prefer to call it, Blue Sky, Threads, and on TikTok. So check all of that out. And yes, happy birthday, LSR. Thank you for all you do with the socials. Let's see here. Crafty Geek at tips.nasaspaceflight.com. The members multi-view is only available through YouTube, correct? Or is the way to get a perk without getting Alphabet a cut? The only way is YouTube membership. But the members multi-view is available for any level of membership, by the way. Avion saying NET is like saying TEATEB for TTEB, the triethyl triethyl boron.
Yes. Thank you.
But yet you can't say VAB is wrong. VAB is correct. So.
Yeah, because everyone calls it the VAB. VAB is correct. NET is not correct.
I'm.
It's just how things are, Sawyer.
Yeah, it's just how things are.
I don't make the rules.
You can
We
tell.
just follow them.
All right. Lou, thank you for gifting a Red Team membership. 2 Red Team memberships, actually. And then Will gifting 10 Red Team memberships. Thank you very much for that. And Storm 4, thank you for becoming a Capcom member as well. We appreciate it. Stellar is asking, will they be attempting to land the Starship soon? So for those who kind of just getting into the loop on this, what is the plan for eventual Starship catches? And there's actually a small piece of hardware on this particular flight related to the catch, right, Ryan?
Yeah, they've got non-structural catching pins on Ship 34. The structural ones are currently installed on 35 and 36, and probably about to be installed or are installed on Ship 37 at this point because it's on its payload bay. The nose cone's on its payload bay now. So obviously that kind of goes to show that they plan on trying to catch them soon. These non-structural ones are to test the reentry heating on them on this flight. And assuming it goes well, assuming they don't run into any issues, the plan is to try and my guess is because SpaceX hasn't obviously said it, but there are FCC licenses that are giving the capability to return ship to the launch site, and the license modification that just came out is giving them the option to go to orbit, but they don't have the authorization to re-enter yet, which I think is kind of funny that they gave that, but besides the point. They'll probably get the authorization after Flight 8, but I would expect as early as next flight, we'll start landing Starships. And reusing? Yes.
Yeah, no, just assuming all goes well today, of course.
Yeah.
And, just small detail. And maybe even reuse Ship 36 or 37? Question mark? Maybe.
I think that's a little further down the line. But...
Maybe. We'll see.
Maybe. And also maybe reuse Booster 14, maybe? Maybe.
Oh, I think they'll reuse 14. It wouldn't still be in Mega Bay 1 if they didn't plan on reusing that thing. It's been in there for a month and a half now.
Yes, exactly. And the hope is that we will see for Flight 9 a reused booster. B-14 was the one that flew on Flight 7 and landed back successfully in the tower. So it is a possibility for next flight. All, of course, assuming they go well with this particular flight. By the way, someone's saying, I tuned into a stakeout and a flame trench broke out. Those who don't know, that's our Friday. Fun. That's our Friday news recap show, which is a little bit on the happier, lighter side, as opposed to This Week in Spaceflight, our Friday serious news show hosted by Alicia.
Lisa's a lot more serious than we are. She's fun, but she's a lot more serious than we are. We're nuts. We're crazy. Right?
Speak for yourself, man.
What's also crazy is the progress so far towards launch here. There's a question here from Jared who's asking, Max, when does prop load start? As there is tank farm activity already.
Yep, so the tank farm is waking up and spooling up more than it was even about maybe an hour ago. So when it comes to fueling ops, SpaceX will conduct a poll from the flight director at T-minus 1 hour and 15 minutes as to verify all systems both on the ground and on the vehicle are go for prop load. And assuming they are go, they will begin the prop load procedure is to unloading propellant onto, I think they start with the ship at T-minus 45 minutes. So it takes 45 minutes until I think ship, what is it? I think ship prop load closes at T-minus 3 minutes and booster prop load closes not long after that. So it takes roughly 40 to 43 minutes ish to have a fully fueled Starship ready for flight. But that will begin at T-minus 45 minutes. So we still have a bit to go there.
Little ways to go, but as you mentioned, the conditioning already starting at least, so you can see that vapors around there as they start chilling things down. And we saw the Pope vent going a bit earlier too. So lots of activity happening, progressing towards that launch time. Fingers crossed for all of that. And of course, keeping an eye on the weather as well. It is very gray and cloudy there, but the main concern still seems to be winds at the moment. And I'm sure Adam will be joining for the actual launch stream coming up in a couple minutes here and help explain the weather a little bit better. Mike, thank you for becoming a PadRat member. Randy, thank you for the kind words about the coverage. Crafty Geek, thank you for becoming a PadRat member. Josh saying, helipad escape bicycle. Nice. Thank you, everyone, for all of the support. It's greatly appreciated. Dave is wondering, by the way, in terms of that next flight, Ryan, do we know what stage of readiness the next ship is at? Where are we at in terms of ship 30, what would that be, 36? 35? And also, just to throw it in there, where are we at with booster 16 as the helicopter flies away?
Well, booster 16 is currently at Massey's, having completed a single cryo. My guess is they will do a second one probably tomorrow at this rate, because they're kind of focused on another stack launching at this point. So they'll probably do that last cryo and then they'll bring it back. Bring it back for engine installation. That could be ready. That could be ready in April. But of course, we've been talking about possibly 14 being used on Flight 9, and if that's the case, I would assume 14 to go out for a reassurance static fire, possibly 2 to 3 weeks after this launch. So maybe 2 to 3 weeks from today, we could see booster 14 roll back out and static fire again, which would be a huge moment in the program if they ended up doing that. Now for the ship's been stacked for about a month. If they continue with the way they have for the Block 2 ships and being able to get them ready quicker and quicker, I could see ship 35 being ready for end of April.
Try Knorr Cups, home-cooked flavor made for one.
Tired of confusing dashboards and unhelpful chatbots when running your WordPress site?
I didn't get that.
With Kinsta, you get a powerful, easy-to-use dashboard and expert human support 24/7, 365. Try it for yourself at kinsta.com.
Two years after Flight 1, which is pretty impressive.
That would be very impressive. Let's see here. Taking more of your questions. Let's see. In terms of that cryo testing, Joe wants to know, do you guys see in the future SpaceX cutting down to only one cryo test for each ship and each booster? Max, what do you think?
I mean, they used to static fire every single Falcon 9 booster that was stacked over the Cape. So, and they've obviously done away with that. So I have no reason to believe that they will do away with some testing of the hardware involved in each flight at some point to speed up the process. But like, Block 2 is still new enough to where they still want to test as much as possible and make sure that they have a full understanding of how both ship and booster perform in under flight conditions, either full of prop or during static fires or anything. So maybe at some point, but they have to reach a level of reliability that really makes sense, if that makes sense.
I think it would make sense down the line, especially if you're trying to get these pumped out relatively quick to be able to have as many as possible out on the pads, get that flight cadence up to what they're aiming for. I feel like you would have to cut down the number of cryo tests. And again, like you pointed out, they still do it rarely for Falcon 9, but not very often. But they do test all new boosters with their cryo and usually a static fire at the McGregor test site in Texas. What's the Ryan? What do you see?
They partially closed the sticks a little bit. Maybe they're just testing them, but they closed the sticks a little bit, and the landing rails are still up. So I'm not going to read into it anymore. They haven't closed them anymore. I think it's kind of really hard to tell if they're opening them up or not. But my guess is they're just testing them. But either way.
So what is normal for the chopsticks during the launch countdown, Ryan? And how exactly does that opening and closing part occur during the flight?
Well, normally they'll just sit open until launch and then close, then do like some quick health checks and then close for booster catch. So it is kind of a little weird that they are doing some closing right now, but I don't know. It's kind of hard to say what they're doing. They could be closing them just for a little bit or just doing some health checks. I mean, there's still 3 hours and 10 minutes until they go. So I would not assume any kind of issue. Just to say, would not assume any kind of issue. They could just be testing them. So we're just going to go with that.
And also, you talked about the landing rails. How exactly do the landing rails help catch the booster?
They're like big shock absorbers. They basically help take the weight of the booster a little bit easier on the whole structure, and just kind of shock absorb it, more or less. So.
And you mentioned that, so those are raised and lowered, the sort of catch rails up at the top there.
Yeah, you see the. It's kind of hard to explain. You see this truss structure, and then you see like the raised lines. Those are basically the landing rails, and they got bumpers on them and everything. So, yeah.
Yeah, if the arms are outstretched, it kind of looks like those flaps at the top. Let's see here. Thank you, a couple more people. Raphael, thank you for getting some stuff from the shop, as well as Alan. Elwin, if you could have any rocket or past mission made into a Lego set, which one and why?
Titan 4.
Oh, okay. Ryan,
without a question, Titan 4.
Any rocket past mission made into a Lego set. Ooh.
I mean,
I want a full MLP. I want MLP, FSS, RSS, external tank solids. I want the whole thing shuttle, all of it, not
Would you
just
mind-
the shuttle. All of
Would
it.
you mind explaining any of those acronyms you just said? Because that may have been like
The fixed service structure, the rotating service structure. Make me a Lego model of 39A with shuttle. Plus, I want one I want a full official Lego MLP for Saturn V as well.
Mobile launcher, yeah.
Thank you. With the crawler and everything. Why not?
I would want to see a Titan. I agree with the Titan, but this one with Voyager. Build your own Voyager. Imagine having to build the RTG, the radio thermonuclear generator, the boom, all of that. That would be a fun build. Good question. Alan, thank you for gifting 10 Red Team memberships. Very much appreciated. Anonymous, getting some more items from the store as well. Thank you. Holly saying, remote camera setup now. Let's go. Doug O saying, ship names stick with the culture. Awaiting regulatory approval. That would be a great name.
That's good.
Yeah, short fellow gravitas. Of course, I still love you. Awaiting regulatory approval. Simple matter of
that would
engineering.
be a great drone ship name. Not gonna lie.
It appears the chopsticks are opening.
They're
once
opening again. So
yeah.
probably just testing.
You can see them slowly extend outwards. Also, a simple matter of engineering, going boldly, and another giant step. So pretty good, actually. David getting some items from the shop. Anonymous getting some items from the shop. Stevery. And John wondering the status of Starship HLS. Have we seen anything yet, Max, for Starship HLS?
I think some presumed HLS parts have been seen inside the factory based on labels, but as for any major piece of hardware or anything that we've either seen or heard from SpaceX, no, we have not seen anything.
Yeah, Brian, it feels like we should start seeing that soon if the goal is, even if it's not so much for the 2026 lunar landing, if it's to get a Martian Starship out by next year.
Yeah, I expect us to see some kind of outside testing hardware with it at some point, but it's probably all tucked away in the factory somewhere. So
yeah,
unfortunately.
There's a lot more walls and buildings up from when we first started covering everything at Starbase, so a lot of it's done behind doors now.
They're going back to launch position, the sticks are. So I think it was just a open and close, just maybe a little quick test. Why not?
That's a good thing. And I mean, once it actually comes to the catch, though, this is obviously the nice and slow in and out. Those things have to close pretty quickly, right?
Mm-hmm. They gotta close pretty dang quick, and that's one of the reasons why they switched to the smaller arms, is because there's a lot less inertia behind the smaller ones compared to these. These they have to. It takes a lot to slow them down, and then they kind of buffer and bounce a little bit. I think with the smaller ones, it'll be a much smoother catch overall. So I can't wait for that to happen.
Oh, yeah. Which, speaking of the other tower, Chris has a question. Will the new tower pretend to catch at the same time as the booster catch?
I don't think it'll do that for this flight. The thing is they're not fully operational. It's partially operational. I don't think they have enough hooked up or enough power running to them at the moment to do the full. I mean, they might be able to do a lift it up and try to do a simulated catch for when the ship comes down. Otherwise, the only other time that those are going to be used for any kind of catching will be when they actually try to do it on Flight 9. So the one thing we should probably expect to see on those is not during this flight, but sometime between this flight and the next one is a full simulated catch run with those sticks a couple of times at the top of the tower and stuff like that. But they're still modifying that top of the tower with the larger gusset plates and extra reinforcements that they did on Tower 1 before flight. For Flight 5. So yeah, we're still waiting on that.
Yeah, still waiting. But hopefully we'll see that. And again, as they continue to work on Pad B out there, we should get some more kind of inkling of how far that pad is coming along. And I mean, so far, they're doing a lot of work on it. We've had Jack do some flyovers with Mary and seen some awesome things from the ground. So cool things to come. And speaking of cool things to come, we are just minutes away from our official launch broadcast starting. That will include our teams down there in Starbase on camera. Of course, Max, I know you're down there right now still, which we appreciate you joining. So, Max, thank you, by the way, for hopping in from the field for all of this.
Yeah, I'm always happy to do it, man. Starship streams are always fun. And anything Starship is fun, really. I mean, it's also a nice change of pace from Falcon 9 in Florida, because we don't have Starship in Florida yet, at least. So, but this is always fun.
Yet being the key word there.
Yet.
Brian, thank you for joining here too.
It's a pleasure as always to go on and talk Starship and cover space in general. Like, it's been fun these last 5 straight days having a stream with you, Sawyer. It's been a ton of fun.
5 streams in a row of Ryan and I.
Well, if that doesn't say anything, there's a lot of other people busy with Starship, so we haven't had. So kind of have to. Unfortunately, they have to use me, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
but it's been
Ryan and I.
Yeah, you're not stuck. Oh, dang it! Now I forgot the line. I was just about to butcher it from Watchmen. But yeah, it's a ton of fun talking Starship and stuff, and I cannot wait to see this thing fly. I hope it flies today. And everything's looking good to go. So
yeah, you won't have to hear us much longer. Also, thank you to Chris Bergen, Gene, Alex, and Adrian, who were on earlier today in the stakeout stream. So stick around. We will have an auto redirect for you here to the main launch broadcast. You'll get to hear your favorites. You'll get Alex. You'll get Adrian. You'll get Gene. Probably get some DOS in there too. Some exciting people. Let me just finish thanking people here. The Tokyo Lounge, thank you for becoming a Red Team member. Lil Green, thank you for becoming a Pad Rat member. Peter Groves gifting 5 Red Team memberships. And Tim with the kind words here saying, thanks guys. Keep up the great work. We appreciate it. Again, we love what we do here. That's why we do this. It's out of passion. We are here because we want to do this. We love doing it. And we're just so glad to be able to share it with you so that we're not talking to ourselves in our houses like we used to. No,
it's
just me.
It's the I'm not stuck in here with you. You're stuck in here with me. There you go.
There you go. But yes, I am Sawyer Rosenstein. I have been your host for the last 3 hours here on this stakeout stream. Again, don't go anywhere. The official launch broadcast is coming up immediately following this. It's going to be a good time. Hopefully, we get a launch of Starship Flight 8 in about 3 hours from now. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. Let's go to the main launch broadcast and watch Starship lift off.
And here we go. We have liftoff. Propulsion continues to be nominal.
RCPA chamber pressure looks good.
Probably not.
It's orange! Oh my god! Liquidation. Look at this! Put that in the big bag.
343 unfolds to go. Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond. Flare, correct?
We don't need any more
Do you hear that? The pure panic of a cyber attack. The endless alerts of component failure and power loss. Can you hear it? Neither can we.
The plan, man, I got the whole world in my hand. I'm in demand, they say I'm the man. If given the chance, I gotta expand. If opportunity knocks, I'ma take it. I swear I've been patient. I'm never complacent, headed for greatness.
You can do that at NASA Space Flight, and that will go to the one and only Adrian. Let's bring Adrian in, and he's going to be the one asking the questions of our commentators. Adrian?
Hello, everybody. Glad to be here for one other Starship flight again. I'm so excited. Of course, fully agreeing here with EJ. It would be great if we get like this, perfect condition miracle, and suddenly it clears up, and we maybe get like this perfect window.
All right. Hey, everybody. All right, you're watching the live stream of SpaceX's launch. We got Big Daddy Elf here, supposed to be doing the commentating. I'm sorry he's not doing a good job. I'm just extremely busy right up until the hour before the launch, but I wanted to give everybody a chance to find a way to view it in case you can't find the NASA Spaceflight channel and throw some commentary out there. So if you are subscribed, make sure you throw something in the comments. Join us in the chat. We will definitely be more live right before. Sorry about that, guys. It's taking a minute to get back to it. And in a second now. Back to the screen. All right, let's try that again. Sorry, guys. There we go.
Well,
And that's the portion of the vehicle that they call the attic, right? So you flush all of that, and then they have vents. They have also added more vents because that's one of the things as well that they found out that that fire that was started, it was too fast and too powerful essentially to be put out by venting it out essentially, because you aren't in a vacuum, so you can just put it out by letting everything escape to the vacuum and not have that source of the fire in the first place. But unfortunately, just with the harmonic oscillations, that ship was of course doomed anyways. But if it were to happen in the future, knock on wood it doesn't, but if it were to happen, at least they have reinforced that area with that prevent sort of remedy, so to speak, right? That will be able to put out those fires.
So on your screen right now on the right-hand side, you do see a ship stacked on what we call Tower 1 on OLM or Pad A, Tower 1, and beneath that you see just the top of the booster. On the left-hand side of your screen, you see a helicopter. It looks very reminiscent of a Coast Guard helicopter. It's painted the same, but it's not. EJ, what do they do with that helicopter? Is that clearing the water around? What's that helicopter for?
Yeah, basically that helicopter, from what I understand, is perimeter security. It looks like a coastal helicopter, but it's not. It's a private helicopter, and SpaceX contracts out that service to go and basically make sure that nobody's near this thing. I don't know if you guys realize this is the most powerful rocket humanity has ever flown. We're talking about 15 million pounds of thrust at liftoff. That's like 70 meganewtons for the metric folks. That you don't want to be near that when it goes off. Yeah, you don't want to be near that. So what that helicopter is doing, it's actually refueling right now, and but it's been going around patrolling the perimeter to make sure nobody is near this thing when it goes off, because you can get right up to this Starship. Not when there's a roadblock. That's why the helicopter is there. But during non-launch operations days, you can get right up next to this thing. It's actually one of the cooler things about Starbase. You can get right next to it. You can go right up to it. There are fences and stuff, and there's obviously signs that you should read where you shouldn't go there if they say don't go there. But it is a very much high.
Eventually, your side hustle might take off, and you've got some great opportunities to work with some new clients. One problem, though, you need a certificate of insurance to proceed. Don't freak.
Within reason. Don't make the sheriffs in Texas angry. That would be a big mistake, right? But you absolutely can go up there. So they're sweeping the perimeter and making sure there's nobody around. You don't want to be near this thing when it goes off.
Yeah. And if you're watching the stakeout earlier today, we just talked a little bit about the roadblocks and where they are. And they start pretty early in the morning. You start with a soft roadblock, the Cameron County Sheriffs and some of the SpaceX security folks roadblock. And then they clear the beach and ask people to take their last photos and kind of move everybody out. This is a very, very powerful rocket that we see on the OLM. And again, on the right-hand side of your screen, there's one of those roadblocks where eventually that roadblock will actually get pushed farther back away from the rocket before it starts fueling, and then it eventually lifts off in just under 3 hours from now. We're at T-minus 2 hours and 47 minutes. And I'm going to take this time to just kind of tell everybody who we are, right? If this is your first time watching a rocket launch or Starship launch, we're NSF. We're NASASpaceflight.com. We have cameras and remote cameras all over the Space Coast. We have them all over Starbase. And we have a very large team of people who just love rockets. We might look it and sound like it sometimes, but we're just a group of friends that really, really enjoy rocket launches, and we're able to do this. It's a privilege for us to do this, to bring it to you. And we love the fact that you're joining us for these launches and support us in doing so. And so one of the ways that you do that is you hit the thumbs up button on YouTube, and you can also, go to our store and all that other stuff. But there are so many people that we want to thank that's Adrian's job during these during these launches. So I'm going to go to Adrian because I know for a fact he always gets behind. So Adrian, let's take this time to thank some folks who are supporting us.
Absolutely. I have quite a few already, and as you said, yeah, I'm already behind. Let's start with Mahar Nar with a super chat here is asking, what is the airspeed velocity of an unloaded swallow? Love you all at NSF.
African or European?
Not clarified in the super chat. Also, we have Conservative Space Nerd with a $100 super chat saying, hey guys, been a while since I contributed. Thanks for documenting this new space race literally from the ground up. And also apparently from a few more altitude higher, because I think you're like in the 12th floor right now or something. So it's a bit higher up. We have Nick here with a store message saying, just received my Flight 7 patch and pre-ordering this Flight 8 one. Have all 7 so far. Thanks for all the great coverage. Go Starship. That's an amazing collection. Thanks for supporting us all the way to now 8 patches. That's really, really cool, honestly. Then, oh god, we have really, you don't say, with a super chat saying, wow, sight fumbling. You think they would have calibrated their X encapsulator?
Well, the hydrocoptic nozzle vanes need to be in perfect alignment to be in line with the panometric fan, Adrian. So give it some time.
Sorry.
Yep. No,
I'm
it's good.
giving. Ruin Visa here with a super chat saying, I just got back from Iraq. I'm super excited to get down here for a launch, and after launch, a party at the Margaritaville? Question mark. We'll leave
Can
that.
I jump in here and just say yes? One veteran to another. Thank you for your service. After this launch, come find me.
There you go. So that's I think let me end this with a question here. Because there's a wondering here about the materials that Starship uses, which right now is of course stainless steel. And Toy Story here is wondering, do you think new and lighter materials instead of steel will be eventually used for Starship? 10 or so refueling missions to send Starship to the moon and Mars seems a lot. And with that, I'm caught up here.
Alex, what do you think about that question? It's a great question.
Yeah, I knew it was going to be sent to me. I unmuted the moment I heard materials. The whole deal with 10 or so refueling trips, it doesn't have to do with the material. It has to do with the physics of the problem. You launch a ship that is basically empty compared to how much propellant it can carry. Like, if you were to carry an empty ship and we go by the referenced, 100 tons to low Earth orbit, which there's some debate whether it actually carries that much right now, right? If you go by that, that will mean 15 refueling trips to completely fully fuel the ship, because you will need 15 of these 100-ton propellant transfers to get there. Why is it that it is 100 tons and not more? It has nothing to do with the materials or anything. If you made that of carbon composite like they were originally planning, it will still be in the same order of magnitude in terms of how many refueling trips, because it is all driven by the physics. Roughly 2 to 3% of your rocket, it's usually the useful amount of payload that you can get into orbit, which means you're going to need a lot of refueling trips to be able to fully fill your second stage, no matter what materials it is being made of. In fact, depending on what materials you use, because if you use, for example, when they were wanting to use carbon fiber, one of the problems of that is that you need a heat shield on the windward side, but you probably also need one on the leeward side, because that material cannot sustain high temperatures. Whereas steel, in this case, they don't need that heat shield on the leeward side. They can just have the bare metal, essentially. And so that is one of the trade-offs that they did very early on. If for whatever reason in the future we were to find a material that, it's like, oh, we can get rid of a bunch of these mass, it will make all of this thing more efficient and everything, but it will not change the whole thing of needing 10 refueling trips or anything like that. It may cut maybe one refueling trip at most, but that whole deal is more down to the orbital mechanics and the physics of launching something into orbit than rather, it doesn't matter what material you use to launch that thing into orbit. You will need some kind of propulsion breakthrough, I guess.
And this is why we go to Alex for all the science questions. When you talk about material science, aerospace engineering, we have a really, really great crew here. And then we also have EJ. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
What?
EJ, one of the things they're testing on this flight, and they wanted to test on Flight 7, which they couldn't get to the re-entry phase. And we're going to go through the whole phase of the flight, but I wanted to focus in on the heat shield. There's a lot of tests going on this flight when they get into orbit. Again, we're going to go through the launch profile later on in the show. But one of the things is the actively cooled heat shields. Some of them are aluminum. Some of them are shorter than the normal heat shield. And Elon has put out, Elon Musk on X, that perfecting the heat shield for this type of vehicle, again, this is groundbreaking stuff, is something that's very difficult. So talk us through some of the tests that they're going to see back at the control room for today's flight.
Okay, so principally we got 3 different types of tiles on this one, Gene. The first one are basically the tiles that they've been running since Flight 1. Well, I mean, this is a little bit of a different, let's say, recipe, I suppose, for the tiles would be the right way to say it. We have the standard kind of fibrous tiles, the unifibrous tiles that we see, which is just basically the hexagonal tiles that you see all over the ship. Now, if we get a shot of the ship here, we can look and see that there are kind of some tiles that are indented a little bit. They look like they're almost a little bit shorter, like in terms of depth to like the stainless steel, right? They're a little bit shorter. Those tiles are aluminum tiles, believe it or not, or aluminium for the rest of the world, right? Right. I like going right down the middle and saying aluminum. Just confuse everybody. That's kind of what I'm here for. No, wait. Anyway, so those aluminum tiles are there to make sure they're basically gauging depth. Like what SpaceX is trying to do is figure out how much those tiles will ablate, because aluminum does not really withstand re-entry heating very well. So it is going to ablate off. It will burn off, just like a heat shield would. SpaceX has those tiles on there to test areas where they may or may not need tiles. Obviously, if they get an image of this thing coming down into land and one of those aluminum tiles is still intact, well, if an aluminum tile can survive being there, the bare skin of Starship stainless steel will absolutely survive going through there, right? So that's what they're using to test with the aluminum tiles. The other type of tile that we have on there that I'm not 100% sure where those tiles actually are basically actively cooled tiles or transpiration cooled tiles. Basically what SpaceX is trying to do with these is the tile basically has a bunch of little holes in it, and that hole is attached to plumbing, think kind of like a tile shaped shower head almost. And what these things do is basically they outgas methane during re-entry. And what happens is with this tile is that methane gets basically caught between the re-entry heating and the surface of the thermal protection system on the vehicle, providing a cool column of gas. It's kind of similar to what you see with the supersonic retropropulsion from Falcon 9 when
You it had comes. to say it. Yeah, of course. You had to say it early. You're going to say it many, many times.
Of course. I'm going to find a way to put that in here. That's my favorite part. So when Falcon 9 comes in and does its entry burn, right, it's firing its engines into the re-entry heat, and that envelops the booster in a cool column of gas because the booster is flying business end first, right? It's flying with the engines facing towards where it's going. This transpiration tile does something very similar to that, obviously with no rocket engine. It's just shooting methane out the side instead of the carbon byproducts that Falcon would fly through. That's part of the reason why Falcon 9 is all caked in soot when it comes through, because it's been flying through its own exhaust. Exactly like that, where they outgas the methane, and the methane that gets caught in between the tiles and the re-entry heat, and it basically absorbs all that heat instead of the tiles absorbing heat. It's it's not a new technology, but it's kind of the first time we'd see something like that on let's say a fully and rapidly reusable spacecraft. So yeah, those are the 3 types of tiles that they have. Now, once again, I'm not really sure where they are, what a transpiration tile looks like. First of all, I've never seen that. Have you seen one of those? I don't know. I'm not sure where those exactly are on this ship, but you can tell that it seems to be a uniform indentation of tiles on the thermal protection system if you take a look at it. It's actually super interesting.
I was talking with Alex earlier about that, and it's going to be very difficult for them to cover the entire ship with whatever the next level of heat shield or thermal protection system they decide to go with. They're testing many of them, and that's been probably, as we say, the hardest part of the entire development process. And I want to remind everybody that what you see on screen is research and development. This is the 8th test flight of the largest vehicle ever flown.
Yep.
This is the tallest, most powerful rocket. It surpasses the Block 1 ship that flew from test flight 1 to test flight 6. The 7 was also Block 2. And going forward, we're going to see potentially a Block 2 booster and a Block 3 booster with integrated hot staging ring. And so everything you see is just research and development.
You've got better things to do. Create surveys in under a minute with AI-powered help from SurveyMonkey.
Everything we ever dreamed of. Everything we ever dreamed of.
We're actually wearing some of our own stuff. You can find at shop.nasaspaceflight.com. And in fact, you can go out right now and you can pre-order the Flight 8 patch. And we'll get the guys in the control room who are doing an amazing job. We'll get them to bring those up so you can see those on the screen. And if you pre-order them now, we start shipping those Flight 8 patches right around the end of March, probably the end of March, early April. We'll see those. But we'll bring those graphics up so you guys can see that in a minute. Let's talk about the launch tower real quick. What are those big arms at the top of the launch tower that you see there?
Well, those are the chopsticks. Those, I mean, we saw on Flight 7 what those do, the fruits of that labor there. They do catch the booster when it comes back down, but they're used for principal integration of the vehicle. Those chopsticks can move from one, they can actually kind of move left and right. And what they do is SpaceX basically tows the booster. They roll out the booster from the production site. They get it inside of the chopsticks. The chopsticks lift it up, put the booster on the OLM, and then they do the same thing with the ship. Those two things basically grab the sides of the Starship. They pick it up and they crown it, which we did see this last night. So that pad is used. That huge tower isn't like a crew access tower, like where you have all the umbilicals going up, like what you'd see with a Saturn V. That thing is actually your integration structure and your launching structure and your landing structure too, because what we saw on Flight 7, like I said, is when that booster came back down, right when the booster was basically hovering over the OLM, those chopsticks slam home and caught that booster. It was the second time that it happened. It actually happened the first time on Flight 5 with Booster 12. We don't talk about what happened to Booster 13 on Flight 6. It landed somewhere.
It worked as expected.
Yeah, it did work as expected.
Worked as
That's
expected.
right.
It had a communication problem with the tower coming in, so they decided to do a water landing in the Gulf. And again, that is exactly so a human on the boost back burn, and we'll talk about this during the flight here in about 2.5 hours. When the booster turns around, does the boost back burn, the human in the control center, they do their checks, they do their safety checks, and they manually command the booster to head toward the tower to land. And in fact, it actually heads for a space just in front of the tower in case there's an issue, and then it kind of crabs its way over. And it's really amazing to look at, and you'll see it on our cameras here in about 2 hours and 45 minutes because it takes about 15 minutes to get up and come back.
Yep.
Weather permits, winds permits, but it's really amazing. But they do a manual command to send it toward the launch tower, and then it's hands off. The rocket is talking to the tower. The tower says, "I'm good to go. Catch ready." The ship says, "Here I come. Get ready to catch me." And there was an issue, and that's why the ship said, "You know what? I don't have that communication with the tower. Just go to my backup," and it worked as expected, and did a soft landing out in the Gulf, and then did other things.
And what it did after that, we don't know. It did a swan dive. It got a perfect 0.0 on the swan dive. That's perfect
right.
score, right?
Yeah.
So those chopsticks are used for, not only putting the booster together, but they're also used for actually getting super heavy, and then eventually a ship, hopefully not on this flight, but maybe in the future, depending on how good this flight goes, that'll be used to receive boosters coming back down, that catch it and put it right back on the pad, and potentially in the future even ships coming back down being caught. Hopefully, I mean, there is nomenclature in the licensing for Flight 9 of the potential for a ship catch. But once again, Gene, you were talking about how SpaceX is constantly prototyping and constantly changing, and they fly often. You fly often, you fail fast, and you figure out what you need to fix. One flight is really contingent. The next flight is contingent on the previous flight. So like what we're seeing here with Flight 8 is basically a duplicate of what we saw with Flight 7. They're trying to make sure that they can, understand what's going on with reentry with the ship and also the plumbing that caused it to explode. And we don't want cause Flight 7 to explode. They're trying to figure out and make sure that works. Just as Flight 8 is contingent on Flight 7, Flight 9 will be contingent on how good this flight goes. So we'll see. That's just how SpaceX does things. It's rapid prototyping. They're not afraid to have a ship blow up as long as everybody stays safe.
Yeah. And as you can see on your screen on the left-hand side, that's one of our cameras real close to the rocket out there at the launch site. And you can see some droplets hitting it. We don't know. We don't have a direct line to SpaceX. All we know is that as of right now, they are still aiming for this afternoon at 5:30 p.m. Central Time here at Starbase, Texas, 2 hours and 31 minutes from now. Now, here is the weather, and I'm going to bring Adrian in a little early to talk about this since they pulled it over on the screen. Adrian, talk us through what's going on right now, please.
So I'm not Ryan Caton, to completely make that clear. Ryan Caton is sick today, so Ryan cannot be in front of the camera being our cloud and map reporter. I'm not sure if we are able to bring in what I'm sharing in terms of map, but okay, remove that partially cloudy because that's actually in front of Starbase. That is the current situation based on the NOAA Goes East satellite. And you can see there is a pretty big block of clouds right now. So Starbase, of course, in the lower left there. What you cannot see, because right now the red ticker is a bit in the way, there is a bit of a corridor that is forming. There you can see it, right about the ghost. You can see it right at the end. There is a bit of a corridor forming of clouds clearing. The question is, will that corridor arrive in time? Will it actually properly form? Will we see like complete clearance of the clouds? We will see. But as of right now, it is a bit cloudy, and we can now, of course, also see rain at the launch site. And I want to also quickly echo what Ija has said before. Just because it rains, or just because the conditions don't look that optimal, that doesn't mean it is out of the corridor where SpaceX can't launch. It's just maybe an annoyance to us.
Yeah. And we have our own folks checking the weather. I'm sure Adam, who is typing right now, is checking the weather, trying to give us an update. But as you see the dark clouds or that, we don't actually know the tolerances of the vehicle itself. We have a pretty good idea and approximation. As you said, just because it's got some rain, just because the clouds look a little bit low, that doesn't mean that they can't punch through those. And if a company is going to test their vehicle in all types of situations, imagine a 747 launching and landing in ice and snow and rain and wind. And that is where the future of Starship and human space flight, that's the desire where they want to take this vehicle to be that reliable and that usable. So if they're going to launch in inclement weather, this is the company to do so. I want to get back real quick and talk about the overwhelming support that we get from you guys. And thank you very much on YouTube for your tips.nasaspaceflight.com, your questions, your super chats, and also going out to our store. I wanted to, Adrian, I'm going to send it back to you. I know there's a lot of people to thank because they come in hot and fast. And so we want to make sure that we say thank you to those people. So back to you, Adrian, and then let's get a question for Alex in here.
Absolutely. I will first issue and also my my store as watching the store here.
Disclaimer.
I will issue the first warning about the patch status. We are over halfway gone on the Flight 8 patch. It's like I'm watching it and I'm just making sure that everybody knows we are over halfway gone. But let me also thank some support here because there's tons of people to thank here that enable all of this. Starting with RC Horseman, a very regular name here we see here all the time, gifting 10 Red Team memberships. Thank you so much, RC Horseman. And of course, thank you for all that you do and all your support. Then we have a super chat from Marco here. Let's see here. Thank you so much. Matt with the store message saying that they watched all 8 flights live with NSF. Every single one of them. That's really amazing. Thank you so much, Matt. Alex here, assume another Alex, gifting 5 Red Team memberships. That's really cool. You can gift other people here a Red Team membership, and I'm not even sure if I'm allowed to say this, but there's like a production behind the scenes where you can even hear the man, the myth, the legend, Kevin Michael Reed, I think, making calls behind the scenes sometimes. So I'm just promoting that here right now. There is this mythical place called the production behind the scenes that is available for members. So that is also going on. And let me see here. Then we have Turtle Sanctuary with a $10 super chat saying, happy to see one of my favorite commentators on screen today. And you guys too. It's very open. It's
Well done.
That's recipe for fight between us, I guess.
Yep. And Alex, I have a question that is perfect for you. Greg, we talked about the purge system earlier that they use now also in the attic in the ship to purge fires. And so the booster system and the ship system use different things for that. So the question here is from Gregory, why use CO2 over N2 or vice versa for fire suppression? Don't they both do the same thing?
Yeah, that's one of the questions that we have had sort of, when we got that update. One of the theories behind that is that maybe they cannot load that on the ship through the quick disconnect arm, because maybe they don't have that connection to put it in the ship on those COPVs that we're talking about, those bottles, right? So the one that maybe they could load is that nitrogen, right? And so that's one of the theories that we have, that perhaps for the booster, they were able to do that and modify that to be able to load the booster with CO2. But unfortunately, it could be that the ship is just, they don't have that connection to put it on the ship. So that's why they need nitrogen. Nitrogen does very well as well to mitigate any fire.
And they're using that in the attic as well as part of the new purge system, but they use it all over the place. They do it on the booster before they light the landing engine. So when the booster comes back in, you see this big vapor cloud. Some of that is just punching through the air, EJ, and the other part of that is they're purging all of this nitrogen or carbon dioxide. Excuse me, I think it's carbon dioxide as well. They purge through there to make sure that any fires that could be in there is out. As you said earlier, fires in rockets bad unless it's going out the back end, right?
If you got fire going in more than one direction, Gene, you got a problem. With a rocket, you want the fire to go ideally in one direction, and that's out the back.
Yeah, and that makes the rocket go uphill. So speaking of that, we are 2 hours, 23 minutes from a potential liftoff of Starship Flight 8, Test Flight 8. And, we're looking for a couple things on this one. I mentioned earlier, we're looking for a couple of things. On Flight 7, they had 10 Starlink version 3 mass simulators in the cargo bay. Unfortunately, we didn't see those deployed. And this time around, they have 4 in the payload bay, and these are just Starlink. They're just blocks of metal. They approximate size and mass of an actual Starlink V3. And when I say Starlink, I'm talking about obviously the satellite constellation that supplies high bandwidth internet all over the planet.
Mm-hmm.
But you were going to say something instead of
No, I was thinking about if you wanted me to go into Starlink. So Starlink is the constellation that SpaceX is working on. It's a crazy big constellation here that's basically is a bunch of cell towers that are floating around the planet. They're working on direct to cell, and these bigger Starship satellites that they're going to use with the Starship program are basically able to generate more power so you can get better connectivity. It's a bigger satellite, bigger solar panel. You can generate more power, you transmit a bigger signal. It's pretty straightforward stuff. But this satellite constellation is really kind of revolutionizing the way we think about how to get internet. I mean, you can get a Starlink antenna, you can get it anywhere. Like, not to just shamelessly plug it. It's a really cool piece of kit. And these new satellites that they're going to put on Starship eventually. I mean, the ones that they have on there are basically mass simulators. It just looked like an amalgam of steel beams that are kind of in the shape of a Starlink satellite, right? And I think that's really more to test the deploy mechanism than anything. They're not going to test the satellite. Those Starlink satellites will obviously re-enter with Starship. Only they'll re-enter, they'll burn up, and hopefully Starship won't. Right? I don't want to put any bad juju out there, but yeah, Starlink's actually a really, really cool and interesting piece of technology. It's kind of the next level. It's kind of the Jetsons future that we all wanted, right?
Exactly. On your screen, you see several of our cameras. We're gonna, and there's a Starlink lifting off in the lower right-hand corner. One of the many Starlink launches we cover here at NSF from the Space Coast, and you can check out our Space Coast live camera on YouTube. Also, our McGregor Live. It does the engine testing, and then Starbase Live, which is what you're seeing on the other cameras on the screen, lifted off by a Falcon rocket there. In the upper right-hand corner, that's the tank farm. That is going to be the commodity storage and some subcoolers and chillers and the things that they use for the propellant of the rocket. And we're going to go to Alex because I want to talk to him about that propellant farm. We see some vapor there. We see some chillers and subcoolers. And when all of these things are working properly, talk us through the propellant of Starship and Super Heavy Booster and what to look forward to as we go into this countdown.
Yeah, so right now you can see a lot of that vapors. A lot of those are coming from those vaporizers, the ones that have a lot of tubes in there, sort of like a spaghetti kind of thing, right? In there, those are used to be able to boil off a bit of that nitrogen and be rather the other way around. They use nitrogen to be able to boil off some of the materials that they use to be able to backfill the tanks on the main storage tanks. So in hopefully, less than 2 hours from now, we're going to have that start of propellant load at T-minus 46 minutes. When they do that, they're going to pump a lot of propellant into the vehicle, which means those storage tanks are going to decrease in volume. So the remaining volume, in order to not pull a vacuum, they need to put something back there, something that creates a pressure. And so that's what they're doing right now. They're not filling it up right now. What they're doing is they're spooling up that system that allows the back pressure fill to happen. Apart from that, we're also sort of waiting to see more activity from the subcoolers as well, which are behind this system essentially. Those subcoolers will bring the temperature of the liquid methane and the liquid oxygen below their boiling temperatures, and then go into their their chill down of the lines that go out to the launch mount and also the lines that go out to the towers. So that's one of the things that usually happens. We'll see OLM vent and tower vent, right? Those often happen, somewhere in between T-minus 1 hour 40 minutes and 1 hour 20 minutes, right? It's a bit of a leeway there that they have, but usually around those times. If we don't see one of those by T-minus 1 hour 20 minutes, you start wondering, maybe we're into some kind of delay or something like that. There's a 1 hour window, so they can delay up to an hour into the window and they'll still be good to go, right? We've seen this in the past. We've seen in the past that we've arrived to the usual time when that OLM vent or tower vent should happen, and we've seen that it's not happening. It's like, is this delayed? And then suddenly SpaceX is like, oh, we're moving to this other time, right? So we're gonna keep a close eye, of course, in about 40 minutes.
O'Reilly Auto Parts can't help you quiet noisy kids, but we can help you quiet squealing brakes. BrakeVest Select Pro pads and rotors are professional-grade parts for domestic vehicles that make braking even smoother and quieter than kids with ice cream cones.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
When the rocket starts to load and we start to see that propellant, as you were saying, Alex, when you say, the propellant starts loading, we do have to super chill these lines up the tower, right, EJ? When we start seeing things spool up from the tank farm perspective, they're not just rushing fuel into this rocket. Talk to us about that process real quick.
So basically, the lines need to be thermally conditioned, right? You have really, really, really cold propellants here in the form of liquid methane and liquid oxygen. And not only do you have a lot of propellants, but you got to move a lot of propellants really quickly. You got to move them quickly into Starships because, Starship is designed to be rapidly reusable. They want to launch this thing a lot. And if the fueling takes 10 hours, right, that's not rapidly reusable. It has to be as quick as a fighter jet, or not a fighter jet, maybe a passenger liner, right? But, we're not talking that quick. I mean, Starship is a lot bigger, carries a lot more fuel. But these lines need to be chilled down. If you don't chill these lines down, you take these really cold propellants that you're trying to move into the booster quick, right? You take those propellants and basically heat them up. Now, liquid methane and liquid oxygen, to the uninitiated nerds out there, don't worry, we'll get you up to speed here. They're boiling propellants. They're cryogenic propellants. In order for methane to exist as a liquid and for liquid oxygen to exist as a liquid down here, where us mere mortal humans exist, they need to be extremely freaking cold. And when they're cold, right, they start boiling. Right. So if you take these boiling cold propellants and you put them through these lines, they'll start to exchange the heat with the lines, and that'll bring the temperature up. It'll bring the temperature up of these propellants where they will evaporate and they'll turn to gas. And that gas inside of the line can cause basically pneumatic pressurization, and you can basically have a geysering effect. Like a Nerf gun, right? It uses pneumatics to shoot the darts out, right? You have that, only instead of the dart coming out, you have the remaining liquid propellant in your line. Don't want that to happen. So in order to get those propellants into the Starship fast, right, and in order to get into it safely without causing the pipes to pop like a balloon, right, you gotta thermally condition these lines. It does take a second, but we should be able to see when that happens. You'll see ice accumulating on the fuel lines when they go, and oxidizer lines when they go to do it.
And one of the other things that are special about this ship on Flight 7 and Flight 8, and EJ, I'm just going to stick with you for a little bit, are the catch pins. Now, we talked about the thermal protection system and how it wrapped around the ship, but they actually pulled 6 rows off of both sides to attach. These are non-structural catch pins because they're thinking for the future, right? They're thinking for Flight 9 and beyond.
Yeah, you're talking about the catch pins on the ship.
Yep.
Yeah, there are kind of duds, I guess. It's just a shell of where the catch pin would be. But how we saw the boosters get caught on Flight 5 and Flight 7, SpaceX is also looking at bringing those ships back and catching them with the tower again. They would be doing a similar type of landing burn that we saw way back in the original Starship test flights from SN8, SN9. I mean, those didn't end well. SN10, and then ultimately SN15. You guys, let me know if you were around during those times, because that was fun. That was classic Texas tank watching, right? Basically, it's going to do a landing burn. Hopefully not like 8, 9, 10. It's going to do a landing burn kind of like SN15 and
And it seems we have a quick moment here where the hotel will be back any second now. So let me quickly thank some. Before we do that, apparently we have a video here that will give you a bit of better overview of what will happen in the next 2 hours and 15 minutes. So let's watch that video and listen to what we can learn.
On the day of a Starship launch, many events need to happen for the flight to take place successfully. One of the first events is the clearing of ground hazard areas, resulting in the closing of Highway 4 and Boca Chica Beach several hours before the launch, something that has already happened. At this point, we now have 3 different roadblocks established along Highway 4. The first one, nicknamed the Soft Checkpoint, is located about 15 miles from the pad at the intersection of Highway 4 and Oklahoma Avenue. Beyond this roadblock, only those with property there and law enforcement officials can pass. This also includes SpaceX employees. The second roadblock, nicknamed the Hard Checkpoint, is located at the intersection of Highway 4 and Richardson Avenue. Beyond this location, only essential SpaceX personnel and law enforcement officials can pass. A third roadblock is located on Highway 4 right after its intersection with Lyndon B. Johnson Boulevard at the end of Boca Chica Village. This intersection is the last one on Highway 4 before arriving at Boca Chica Beach, so up until now, it was used to control direct access to the beach. Soon, we should see this roadblock being cleared, if it hasn't already, as it's too close to the pad for anyone to safely remain there during launch. With the ground hazard areas closed, SpaceX should now be in the process of conditioning the tank farm. During tank farm conditioning, the subcoolers on the tank farm are slowly filled with liquid nitrogen, and the liquid oxygen and liquid methane propellants should be flowing through the transfer lines from the ground tanks to the subcoolers. During tank farm conditioning, you'll probably see venting every now and then, including the now famous Pope vent. This is completely normal and expected. Although the timing can vary, especially if the launch is delayed into the window, this conditioning should last until about 1.5 hours prior to launch. This is when the conditioning goes from the tank farm to the propellant lines that go to the launch area. This conditioning will see the flow of propellants from the subcoolers out to the launch mount and launch tower. This process will be noticeable because a vent will appear on both the OLM and the tower while it's happening. The vent on the launch mount will start off weak at first, but will progressively grow in intensity as we get closer to the start of propellant load on the booster. As for the tower vent, it'll start at a normal intensity and will stay active for a few minutes before weakening or completely disappearing. Then it'll come back again and with significantly more power as we get close to the start of propellant load on the ship. At around this point in the countdown, we should also see venting from the booster chines closer to the launch tower. This is a sign that carbon dioxide is being loaded into the tanks, which will feed the vehicle's fire suppression system during flight. While this conditioning is happening, the SpaceX flight director will conduct a poll with operators to decide whether or not to proceed with propellant load. Here's hoping that later today, everything is go for Starship. On the day of a Starship launch, many events need to happen. On the day of a Starship launch, many events need to happen for the flight to take place.
And we are back. Hello, everybody. We're still working on getting the hotel crew back. And in the meantime, Alex and I will be taking over. Apparently, and I will quickly confirm this, you need actually power to run cameras. And there's not that much at the hotel right now. So that is the reason we are working to get them back. And in the meantime, you're stuck with Alex and me.
Live coverage,
Alex,
y'all.
yeah. Let's talk about weather limits here, because weather is a bit of an iffy point here. What determines actually if a rocket is in its weather limit? How do these weather limits come up? Like, is the rocket company just making them up? And why are weather limits even a thing?
Well, you normally want to. So when you design your rocket, right, you know its limitations, things like bending moments and things like that. Like, for example, Falcon 9 in essence, it's too long, for example, to go through very high wind shear at upper altitude. For example, when it goes through max Q and you have one bunch of wind here and that other way, it's too long, and so there's this bending force, right, that could just snap it apart. You know those limits on your vehicle, and those will determine essentially those weather rules that you need to apply to it. There are usually general rules. If you are, for example, at Florida at the Space Coast, there's usually these, widespread rules for everyone that operates in that spaceport, for example, that the range puts in place. Maybe some rockets can fly in very extreme weather environments, but the range itself, they want to keep those rockets still within those parameters. So sometimes you'll see certain rockets are like, oh, we can fly, but we are breaking the rules of the range and things like that. SpaceX operates their own range, so they establish their own rules, right? So that's kind of at least at Starbase, that's what they do, so they can adapt more to what Starship can handle. Unfortunately, we don't know any of those details, right? It's one of those things that we can talk about all of you want, about the different ways and different rules that could be there, right? But we don't actually have hard numbers and like a list given by SpaceX of what are the rules and what are the different constraints. Of course, you usually look for liftoff winds, upper level winds, the wind shear, sometimes the temperature might affect some of the ground systems, maybe, like, you don't know, right? Things like even proton flux from the sun can affect your electronics, because you're going out into space, right? And so you're out of that, most of that shielding from the atmosphere. There's a still magnetic field around Earth and whatnot, but you get out of a lot of the protection of the atmosphere and so on and so forth. And so they look at everything. And again, we can make a whole list here of what those uncertainties and rules could be, but we don't have the hard numbers, unfortunately. Maybe one day SpaceX will release some of this information, or at least we'll have to, piece it together by different comments from officials and whatnot. We kind of have an idea already of Falcon 9, like no more than 23 knots winds and things like that. Like those things we know now because over time, the program has been already 15 years into, in length. We've been able to hear all of those comments and all of the different numbers and everything. And it's launched a lot. For more than 450 times now. So of course we've been able to get all of those numbers in our memories and whatnot. And so yeah, that's essentially the gist of it, I guess, because we could go on forever. But we are 2 hours and 6 minutes away from that launch, and I think people are more interested in other things.
I
muted.
apparently
There
was
you go.
talking but muted. It's the thing. Then another question here regarding. So today is a interesting day because they want to release some Starlink demo satellites, Alex. And people are wondering. So they released them in space, and of course they are kind of on the same trajectory then as the upper stage. So one question we are getting is how does SpaceX maintain separation between the Starlink dummy satellites and the Starship upper stage?
Yeah, so one of the advantages that they'll have on this flight is that they have planned a relight of one of the Raptor engines on Ship 34 about 10 minutes after that satellite deployment. So that's one of the things that they are going to be able to do in order to get away. Normally, on operational flights, once they go into orbit, for example, with Falcon 9, what happens is that the satellites are drop off, right? And they usually have their own momentum, right? Like they are drop off, and that sort of momentum keeps them away. And then there's a waiting time until you are on the right location for the deorbit burn. In the case of the second stage, it is because they need to drop it off on an ocean, and most of the time it works. Sometimes it doesn't. And when it works, they're dropping it off in an ocean, either the Indian Ocean, the Atlantic, or the Pacific Ocean, depending on what mission and essentially what's more convenient, right, for the type of mission. And so what usually happens is that there's like a gap in time, and so that allows them, those satellites with that momentum, to get away, far away from that second stage. Because you have to think about another thing as well, especially in operational flights. You like those engines, if you are close to the Starlink satellites, you may blast them with that Raptor engine exhaust, right? Like once they go with Starship into orbit and deploy Starlinks or any other satellites, how do they even deal with that? Well, they just leave a little bit of time after deployment to do any other burns. And so we've seen that with rideshare missions on transporter missions, for example. They deploy hundreds of those at a time. And so they deploy a bunch, they maneuver into another orbit, and before that maneuver, they sort of wait. And in this case, if they were not not able to do that relight, or even not do a relight, the time between the deployment of those Starlink satellites and the entry is about 30 minutes, which means that's about the same time that they have between separation of the Starlink satellites on a Falcon 9 mission, right, and that the orbit burn. So it will leave enough separation time, to get away. Like say it's 1 meter per second separation. That's a lot of time. That's more than 1 kilometer, near 2 kilometers away from that second stage. So they could get decently far away from Starship.
Alex, we are seeing some venting here on the tank farm. Of course, we have seen similar venting now. Sorry, I'm hearing we have a balloon. Are we able to show that? Apparently, yes. There was a. So this is interesting. This is a weather balloon that was just launched. That is in the near proximities to Starbase. So apparently, SpaceX is starting their weather survey and has started to launch weather balloons. Alex, why do they do that?
Well, they kind of need to know how the weather will be up there, right? The winds and conditions in general that are going to be aloft on this launch trajectory. And so that's what they do. Obviously, they're tracking. It's not just important to be able to know how it'll be in the future, but also how it is right now, because you want to see the trend. We are 2 hours away from that opening of the window, and so you want to launch it and get the data from now, right? It also takes a while to get up there to altitude, by the way, so it's not immediate, right? But you normally gather this information before the launch to sort of make a sort of registry of what are the winds, what are the conditions up there, and then you can see trends before the launch. And if you see things, for example, like shear and there's more in this direction, there's more other direction, or you have winds increasing, then you're like, maybe we're not in the right track, right? You can also make forecasts because you have more hands-on data of those conditions up there, and then you can run forwards those 2 hours until the opening of the window. And so that's very important to have at hand, and they do it now again well before that lunchtime to get those trends, to get those models running, and be able to make sure that they are set up for launch in 2 hours from now.
And I am hearing, I'm doing a quick of a improv check here. The place that has no power has power again, I'm hearing here.
You know, we've done a lot of launch streams in my day, in your day. Have we ever had the entire hotel go out of power?
I think they popped a transformer.
They were like, hey, watch this.
Yeah.
Click, click.
Hold my liquid method.
We're back.
We're back.
What were you guys talking about? Yeah. What were you guys? We've been running around like rat. We were like, What have you guys been talking about?
I can tell you that the moment I saw on our back channel the message, power went out at the hotel. Was like, oh.
Yeah, oops.
No, we are just talking a bit about we were doing a bit of a Q&A here to fill the time until you're back. So, Gene, I'm handing over the virtual reins here to you again for this show.
Great, because I have no idea what's next. I appreciate that, Adrian.
I actually also have no idea. I can do support because I have some very generous support.
Yes, please.
Let me start with the Space Pope here with a $500 super chat.
Thank you so much.
And sorry we just got to that because while this was ongoing, we didn't do support. Blessing to the following: this flight chat, Jack's hat, and the NSF team. Positive thoughts go out to the Earth Pope and hopes for speedy recovery. Hopes for a safe flight, and as always, choose kindness. In the name of the Flame Trench, the stage step at the Holy Space Ghost. Mayone. Thank you so much. I mean, that's an incredible amount of support. And we are so grateful for always when you're here, Space Pope. So this is not a one-off. This is a very regular in the chat. Thank you so much. We also let me go to that. Have Joa and William Weaver both gifting 20 Red Team memberships. Thank you both. Also very regular names here. I'm so grateful for that. Hope you're enjoying the show as always, and thank you for, as always, hanging out with us. And we have Bob here coming in with a super chat saying the Kevin might read something strong to drink fund. Thank you for that. And yeah, with that, I think we are through with that. So, Gene, Starship, huh?
Yeah, Starship's, it's out there somewhere. The weather has not improved. The power, for now, is stable. Right, EJ?
Knock on wood.
Knock on wood. We're saying that. We are under 2 hours now from a no earlier than potential liftoff. And again, even though our long distance cameras might not be the best for the weather today, it might not be cooperating, we still have our close-in cameras. We have our remote cameras. We have the cameras positioned by our really talented photographers here at NSF, and they are going to bring you, hopefully, knock on wood, some amazing views of the launch and potentially the recovery of the booster. And then, of course, we'll have the feed where we're going to watch Starship do what it does in space and hopefully, like Flight 7, get into its proper trajectory, which is a free return trajectory that takes it over to the Indian Ocean. And I have no idea where we are in the production room, but I know. Did we do the timeline video? I think we did the timeline video.
Yes, we did.
We did the timeline video. Okay, great. Do we want to go to? Let's see. I'm kind of figuring this out because when the power went out, everything did its thing. But as they say in show business, the show must go on, right, EJ?
Oh yeah, we We improvised, we adapted, and we overcame.
That's exactly right. That's not going to help us. But we are seeing the same venting from the commodity storage. We are seeing the tank farm spooling up. And I want to go to Alex and ask what's going on with what we're seeing on the screen. And we see these tanks spin up and more of the venting there.
Yeah, we're starting to see a little bit more activity there on those vaporizers, and transfer lines are also getting chilled down as well, moving all of that liquid oxygen and liquid methane out to those subcoolers. Those subcoolers, they essentially have like little lines running through them. Well, not little, but they have lines through them where that liquid oxygen and liquid methane can flow through, and then inside there's this bath, so to speak, as they call it, in liquid methane, in liquid nitrogen. I'm a bit nervous right now because we're getting very close to the launch, and so things are popping in my head. And so right now we are essentially transitioning from getting those propellants that are on the ground tanks and putting them out to those subcoolers that are now being cooled down, chilled down, getting all of that prepared for that for those same propellants now to flow out to the launch mount and the launch tower. That's going to be the next step. After this, we're going to see that OLM vent, that's gaseous oxygen venting out of that vent, and then from the tower, we're also going to see a similar vent as well, also gaseous oxygen. We're going to see a lot of activity also around that time as the subcoolers become a lot more active. We're going to get also potentially some action from the booster side of things, because those chines, two of them, those aerodynamic triangle pyramid thing, prism things, I guess, that you could see on some of these shots on the booster, two of them, the ones that are closest to the tower, those carry CO2 tanks. And so that CO2 is loaded liquid form. It's very cold, and so they vent. And we'll see some of that venting, hopefully, as we come down here.
One of the things that we do going into this is we normally see activity from what we call the Pope vent. Now, the weather and the clouds in the background make it very difficult for us to actually see that. Are we seeing that? Because it looks like we are seeing venting from that vent on the left, that little stack that comes up. But I can't confirm or deny that based on the picture that I see. What do you guys see? Alex, I go to you.
That vent is part of the whole process of getting the tank farm ready. What we're seeing there in that particular vent, though, is gaseous nitrogen, part of that system to be able to cool down some of the systems, especially related to the recondenser, the vaporizers, and whatnot. So that is different from all of the other venting that we're seeing, but it's part of the process, right? Once we see that and we are close to a launch, we know that things are getting ready, that things are getting primed, I guess, or conditioned for that tanking. But yeah, that won't happen though until 1 hour from now. It takes a bit of time. It's not just you slap your fingers or something like that and suddenly it's all ready to go, right? You need to condition all that. As EJ was explaining before, these things just a few hours ago, they were at ambient temperature. They were at whatever temperature it is right now at Starbase. And so you're gonna run really cold stuff through them. You're gonna get flash boil off, materials may there we go, that's the temperature, 22°C. Thank you, Kevin. And 71.6 Fahrenheit for those that use that. And so you can get a lot of bad things if you don't actually condition those lines for that
How long does it take to actually fuel the vehicle, and how much fuel does it carry?
About 46 minutes from the first action of loading propellant until T0. That's about 46 minutes. And they carry about 1,500 tons of propellant. It used to be 1,200 tons of propellant on the ship, and about 3,400 to 3,600 tons of propellant on the booster. So more than 5,000 tons of propellant on board this rocket. It's the heaviest rocket ever.
And that's why we were talking earlier about how many starships it would take to refill another starship, and they're going to have a tanker variant. And let's discuss that just for a few minutes here. Going forward, if Flight 8 is successful, we're going to see Flight 9 and so on and so on. We're going to see lots and lots of flights of this test vehicle. We're also going to see lots of variants of this test vehicle. EJ, talk us through some of the variants that we could see if you had a crystal ball to look into the future.
Okay. So the important thing to understand here, Gene, is that Starship is not, I mean, it is a rocket, right? But you got to understand what SpaceX is trying to do with this thing. And in order to understand these variants, you got to think about it like kind of like an airplane. SpaceX wants airline-like operations. So you got to think about these variants like you think about a variant of an aircraft. We have kind of Starship Prime, I guess, which is the one that, SpaceX wants to send to Mars. Think of that like kind of a passenger plane, a jetliner, right? And then you have the tanker variant, the one that, is designed to refuel starships, the first mentioned Starship in low Earth orbit so it can go to Mars, right? That's the tanker variant. It's similar to how, like, you have a 707 and then you have a KC-135. A 707 moves people around, and KC-135 moves fuel around, but they're the same. It's all based off of a 707 at the end of the day. I understand, people, the aviation geeks are going to grill me for that one, saying like, oh, the KC-135 is on a 707. It's a different thing. Yeah, I understand. They're all based off of the same chassis, though, so to speak, right? These variants of Starship that we're going to have is one used for refueling, one used for people. There's going to be the human landing system variant, which is technically another one used for people, but it's going to be slightly different than the one that they're going to go to Mars, right? Then you have the depot Starship, which is basically on-orbit fuel farm, which is supposedly going to be a bigger one where all these tankers will go and refuel, and then the depot ship will refuel the ship, either the HLS or a Mars-bound Starship in the future to, do things on the moon and Mars. That'd be pretty cool. I kind of want to see that. But you got to think about it like you'd have different variants of a passenger plane. Like there's there's cargo versions of passenger planes. There's tanker versions of passenger planes, and then there's passenger versions of passenger planes, right? These different variants will basically allow Starship to go wherever you need. Like obviously, the first places where Starship is going to go outside of low Earth orbit is the human landing system for the Artemis program. But in the future, these operations could afford you to send hundreds of ships all at once out to Mars in a transfer window, and basically once you're refueled on low Earth orbit, you're halfway to anywhere per the delta V equation, right? So you could pretty much go anywhere with just these three variants: the tanker, the depot, and the passenger ship. Go wherever you want. You move cargo wherever you need to in the solar system, which would be great.
On your screen right now, you see the full stack. That's booster 15 on what we call the orbital launch mount, but and then on top of that is ship 34, and in between there is the hot staging ring, which is a piece that can be removed and put on, and that was put on, EJ, and it's kind of a stopgap measure when for the first flight they were all actually kind of rotating things and then the entire ship and then detach them, and they were trying to use as little energy as possible to do so. And when the first flight obviously did not go as planned, but it gave them a lot of data, let's be honest. And they've made a lot of iterations. And one of the iterations they did was to add that hot stage ring or interstage in there that allows the venting of the first stage. So talk us through how the hot staging or stage separation works on Starship and how it's different from, say, a Falcon 9 that we see launch.
Okay, so if we want to start with Falcon 9, Falcon 9 uses pneumatic push rods to actually separate. There's 3 on the rim of the interstage on a Falcon 9, and then there's one that kind of pushes up the nozzle of the Merlin vacuum engine. Now, those are hydraulically actuated from nitrogen, or it could be helium, whatever. It's a pneumatic system. It could be either one of those. I'm not 100% sure, but you got to understand, Gene. Like if we were going to try to do that with Starship's a lot higher mass. That's a lot bigger of a system, of a separation mechanism that you would need to push this thing apart. And then, obviously you have more moving parts to a vehicle that already has a lot of moving parts, right? So what you got to do here, what they wanted to do with Starship is basically try to eliminate all of that. So what do we have on the ship here that already can provide us a way to separate, right? Well, the engines can get you separated pretty quick. They can get you separated pretty fast, and they can get you separated away from super heavy really, really quickly. So instead of coming up with some complicated separation mechanism using springs or some type of pneumatic drive mechanism, I'm sure I could picture like the SpaceX engineers having this conversation. Why don't we just fire the upper stage engines? It's worked before.
Those with Robinhood Gold can enjoy a 3% IRA match.
tremendous.
Heavy shuts off most of its engines. A point in the timeline that SpaceX calls most engine cutoff instead of main engine cutoff, like for a Falcon 9, right? So with 3 engines ignited on Starship and 3 engines ignited on Super Heavy, the vehicle never stops going under acceleration, but the Starship fires its engines, the exhaust goes out that hot staging ring, and basically Starship shoots off into the wild, dark yonder here. So this mechanism is a lot simpler, believe it or not, albeit a little bit more, a little bit more complicated. You're just firing rocket engines into your first stage. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Nothing bad will happen. So, but mechanically, this is a lot simpler than some type of separation mechanism. So SpaceX, I think with Flight 1, what they were trying to do is kind of rotate the thing a little bit, and then they ended up rotating the entire stack a bunch of times. So I think they said, let's do hot staging instead. Now, okay, I'm going to get a little bit in depth here if you got just a moment of your time, chat. Now, why? Why is the separation mechanism important? Why can't they just separate it and then fire the engines? Well, these rockets got to be under acceleration when they go to fire these engines. Down here on the surface, like when the first stage ignites, when Super Heavy ignites, all the propellants are settled at the bottom of the tank because of gravity. When you're flying and when you get to staging, that's not necessarily the case. If you shut off your first stage engines and then go to separate, right, you're not going to have a good feed because all your propellants are going to slosh forward. And then you run the risk of having one of your engines ingest not fuel. If they're ingesting ullage gas or they're ingesting gaseous, propellant, because the propellants are boiling. I mean, they're liquid fuel rocket engines. You don't put liquid in a liquid fuel rocket engine, bad stuff happens. So you got to keep this vehicle under acceleration. And SpaceX found a really ingenious way in that hot staging ring and using hot staging, which, believe it or not, is not anything new. There have been rockets that have been hot staging as far back as 1957. The Semyorka, a Soviet rocket, used a hot staging style mechanism. So it's not a new thing, but in this particular application where you have the biggest rocket, the heaviest rocket, and you need a separation system, then firing 3 engines, and then firing 6 engines total. This is the simplest way to get it done. So that's what that kind of cheese grater looking thing that is halfway up the stack sitting at the bottom of Starship. It's vents in the side to allow for the gas from those 3 vacuum Raptor engines to vent in that split second where Starship has its first stage engines and second stage engines ignited all at once.
That was a very long answer, and I think you need a breather. That's why we have EJ. He's very knowledgeable about these things. If you're just joining us, we are 1 hour and 45 minutes to a no earlier than launch time for Starship Flight 8. And what that means is that the window opens, and I believe it's a 60-minute window, opens up, and SpaceX can look to launch at anywhere within that 60-minute window. And that is the time that we keep counting down to. We look at the no earlier than time or once announced the T0 time, which of course we'll update and bring you that as well. Adrian, let's go to you. And when you find a question, why don't you send it back to us? I'll see if I can answer it, or we'll make EJ hyperventilate. Let's go ahead and thank some folks real quick, because I know the support has been coming in hot and fast.
It has absolutely been a crazy streak of people joining Capcom. Capcom, of course, the membership level where you get access to our membership Discord, and they have been. So we have Anonymous, Falcon 992RC, Chester Lovis, Isufanis, and Michael, all joining the Capcom membership team in a matter of a few minutes here. Thank you all for that, and I hope you get all the access to the membership Discord. Then we had Helena here with a $13 super chat, no message attached. Thank you so much for that. That's just a very generous amount of support with no message I can use to talk more about it. William Weaver, also a very regular name here, gifting 20 Red Team memberships. Thank you so much for that. And then we have also Wood 4000 joining Capcom as well. Thank you all for this very generous support. Leon Fisher here with Super Chat saying, awesome job, everybody. Do you think we will ever see a dual launch? Picture the patch. Alex, do we ever... Alex, I know you're a realist. Like, I know you're probably giving me, no, that's not possible. But is there percentage of a chance that there could ever be a dual launch?
Well, it's not that they couldn't, but in the current configuration, obviously no. But that's why it is current, right? Like they could just upgrade it and be capable of that. One of the things that they will need is to get a lot of more propellant storage, because right now they don't have enough for 2 full stacks. And once Starship gets, Block 3 and everything, and gets a lot more propellant storage, capacity and everything, you need an even bigger tank farm and things like that. But one of the benefits of how they run this is that the storage is common between both pads, right? But those subcoolers and pumps that push out things to the pads, those are separate. So there's a group of those for pad A, there's another group for pad B, and so they can essentially run the same storage tanks for both pads at the same time. There's a bit of a caveat there, which is there's a common pressurization system for those tanks, those ground tanks, right? But in theory, that could be upgraded as well. So you will need more storage tanks, and you will need some upgrades here and there on that pressurization system. But maybe there's a possibility of that in the future, and then they will be able to run both full stacks and launch within minutes of each other. Not sure about launching at the same time, but at least within minutes.
I would love to see two starships sitting on 2 boosters at 2 launch towers. EJ, I don't know about you, but one super heavy rocket is cool. 2 would be cooler.
I'd tell you, I'd love to see 2 rockets launch at the same time, man.
Actually,
go ahead.
Actually, they would be the same temperature, right? Because they're both aiming for the same. They're not
cooler. The puns have started, ladies and gentlemen. The puns have started.
Here we go.
Adrian in from left field with the cool pun. But as we say here, more rockets, more better, and that's one of the things that we look forward to. No earlier than the window opens in 1 hour and 40 minutes. And we're going to say hi to some folks in the field during this broadcast when we get closer into the countdown, because one of the big questions that we get, EJ, is people want to come down, and today is probably not the best day for visibility at great distances, but there are many distances here at South Padre Island over on the Starbase side of the Port of Brownsville where people can see the launch. So we constantly get questions of, can you see it from Corpus Christi? Can you see it from here in Mexico? Can you see it on South Padre? And I'll tell you, one of the cool places is the Rocket Ranch, the outpost at Rocket Ranch is one of the cool places that you can see that. And then, we team up with them and they're friends of ours. And it's actually the closest you can get. It's 4 miles from the launch site. And you've been out there. I haven't been out there.
Oh yeah.
What's it like?
Well, Rocket Ranch is like Gene was saying, it's about as close as you can get. It's about as close as you can get to this launch site. You're about 4 miles away. The people out at Rocket Ranch are really nice. That's where I actually fixed Jack's Land Rover the other day. I was fixing NSF cars to make sure they can get you these beautiful shots like you see on your screen there. Yeah, Jack, I mentioned it. So what? No, Jack's probably sitting there going, no. Do we have some venting activity there?
Yeah. And you can actually see this is the shot from Rocket Ranch on the outpost. And Jack is there. We're going to talk to him in just a little bit. Not right now, but we want to show you that camera. And that's as close as you can get. So you can still see it, even with some of the low fog today. You can still see that rocket really, really good. And you'll be able to see the launch and hopefully the booster catch when it comes back to the launch site. One of the other things that this is our shot from, I believe that's trailer. Is that our trailer?
Yep, that's trailer. That's the trailer shot in the danger lot.
In the danger lot, and you'll be able to see that. And we also have some cameras out in the dunes. We have one north of the launch site, one to the south, and we'll cycle through those close-up cameras, and they are remotely operated by folks at NSF that do a fantastic job. So just because you see our faces, don't think we're the ones doing this. We're not. There are some very talented photographers and engineers in the background, and we couldn't do this without them, and we also can't do it without you. So thank you very much for joining us today here on YouTube and also the Popular Science channel. We appreciate you watching this live launch coverage from NSF. We are at the Margaritaville Hotel on South Padre Island, and it, from our vantage point on a clear day, is absolutely a beautiful, beautiful place to see the launch. If you're going to rent a room here, get one on the south side of the building. You will see a full shot of both launch towers at Starbase and then also the production site And if you lean to the left just a hair, you can see Massey's off in the distance on the right-hand side. As we get close to 90 minutes, we're going to get into our terminal launch coverage here in just about 7 or 8 minutes, which means we're going to be bringing you more of this, but we're also going to talk some different things about this big, giant rocket. And you can see on your screen right now, it's one of a really neat shot where the vaporizers, you can actually see the ground fog. That's actually coming from the propellant site. I'm going to bring Alex in just a second and talk about that. But EJ, that's coming from the propellant plant, not the propellant plant, but the commodity storage,
the tank farm.
Tank farm. That's the word I was trying to think of. Yeah, and look at it. You can see where the wind is coming through and pushing all of that out. Now, as it vents, right, we're going to start to see several things happen. We'll see a vent come from the tower, the OLM itself, and we'll see halfway up the tower. So how do they get the fuel from the propellants into the ship, into the booster? Let's talk booster first and then ship.
Okay, so this is a very unconventional way, might I add, of moving propellants into a booster.
Yeah.
Usually, like let's take I don't know, just a conventional route. Let's take the space shuttle. The space shuttle would tank basically hours before they launched, and how they would do it is basically heat up the tanks. You heat up the tanks, create head pressure in the pipe, it moves. It's a very, very simple way of doing it. There's heater coils in these pipes. They heat the pipe up, and you get the propellants moving. Now, SpaceX, because they have some very, very, very interesting design criteria here, meaning that rapid reuse that we keep hearing them talk about, they can't really do that. That takes a little bit of time. SpaceX can't afford to do that. This thing's got to go.
Oh my gosh.
A little louder, Sally. There's a couple in Cleveland that can't hear you.
This rocket fully fueled as quickly as possible so we can get up off the pad and go out and do its thing in space. That's really, really kind of a big deal because SpaceX is trying to go for rapid reusability, right? They're trying to make sure that this thing can be reused over and over again and the fueling isn't a bottleneck. Like, once again, if you cast your mind back to the space shuttle, that thing took hours to fuel. And even then, it went into a top off before, and then they put the crew on board and go from there. This thing is not like that. This ain't your daddy's space shuttle, Gene. You know what I mean? This thing has got to go quick. So they have these big fluid impellers that move this fuel around. It's really, really cool because, you got to consider, we heard Alex talk about how heavy this thing is. They're moving an amazing amount of propellants into this thing in like an hour. It's pretty crazy.
He said 5,000 tons of propellant.
It's no joke.
That is an amazing amount of fuel, and you see it there on your screen. Some of that gets vented, and it makes this haze that comes across. And of course, they'll probably have some drone footage and some cool camera shots of that as it goes through. And then once it gets up to the ship, it's got to go up the tower because the halfway up the tower, you see on the left-hand side of your screen there, in the middle, the left-hand side of the launch mount. What you see is what's called the BQD, or the booster quick disconnect. And then halfway up the ship, if we can get a shot of that, you'll see the ship quick disconnect. It's pretty much the same thing, except to protect them from the roar of 33 Raptor engines, they protect themselves differently. Talk about how the ship quick disconnect protects itself at launch.
So the ship quick disconnect basically moves out of the way. It's on a hinge. That hinge is actually on the back side of the tower relative to the vehicle. It disconnects and it moves out of the way. It's on a big retraction arm that moves out to the side when the vehicle goes to launch. Obviously, you don't need your fueling paraphernalia lighting on fire when the rocket goes up. You want to get out of the way because if it stays there, you're going to lose it because there's going to be 33 engines coming up right up in its business, right? So the ship quick disconnect actually moves out of the way. That's comparatively like the booster quick disconnect, which is down on the OLM ring at the bottom of the vehicle. They can't really move that out of the way. It's kind of attached. So they have a big metal cover that basically swings into place and covers it from the business end of super heavy, basically frying it into oblivion.
Yeah. And then the ship quick disconnect, it swings out of the way, right? It disconnects, it swings out of the way.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It moves out of the way. But
it doesn't move very fast. It still gets scorched, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's...
I would say yes.
everything in that general area is gonna get scorched.
Yeah.
Let's be real.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does kind of swing out and out of the way. I mean, you don't need to get it very far from the rocket. Like, you know, if it's sat in that same position, obviously you'd run the risk of hitting it, but it would probably get pretty messed up from those 33 engines. But even like, I don't know, a couple feet out of the way or a couple meters out of the way, right? You can mitigate the damage a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, that thing swings out to the right and makes sure that it doesn't get hit by the engines.
And let's talk about those engines for a minute.
Sure.
These are full flow stage combustion engines. Tell everybody what that means. What is a full flow stage combustion engine?
So the Raptor engines, it's basically, I mean, the key to any rocket is your propulsion. The entire design of the rocket is built around your propulsion. Think like the space shuttle. The space shuttle is built around the space shuttle main engines. Without the main engines on the space shuttle, you're not getting very far. You're not getting anywhere, right? So the Starship is built around these Raptor engines. Now, these Raptor engines are full flow stage combustion cycles. And yeah, I mean, we could nerd out here if we really want to. I mean, and it depends on how much lung capacity I have here.
Yeah, right.
You know, I'll talk your brain off here. But you know, a really quick and easy way to understand how like a full flow stage combustion cycle works is that you basically have on the side of the engine, you have two jet engines. One of them is designed to run with a lot of methane and a little bit of oxygen, and the other one is designed to run with a lot of liquid oxygen and a little bit of liquid methane. And these two jet engines, they're called pre-burners, right? And those two jet engines basically find their way into the combustion chamber on Raptor, basically where the big explosion happens. You get more fuel and more oxidizer put in there, right? And then you get a gigantically energetic explosion coming out of the bottom. Raptor, in its main combustion chamber, is capable of 300 bar chamber pressure, which is 300 atmospheres. That's a lot. That's really, really high pressure here. Now, if you think about it, like in terms of jet engines, you know, jet engines have afterburners, right? An afterburner, like a reheat. This is doing the opposite of that because this is upstream from your main ignition, right? So they're called pre-burners. These pre-burners are driven also, they're driving the impellers. They're driving fuel pumps that pump fuel into the pre-burner. Pre-burner does its thing. Jet engine exhaust, pre-burner engine exhaust goes right into that main combustion chamber. And then you get a lot of freedom coming out the bottom there. You know what I mean? You get a lot of freedom. That's the quick way of saying it. The benefits of a full flow stage combustion cycle is that you can get really, really high chamber pressure. You can get a very, very, very powerful engine from this. But having a very, very powerful engine does have its drawbacks because you're kind of pushing the limits of material science here. Long story short, stuff likes to blow up.
Yeah,
that's the quick way of saying that.
And we saw that on Flight 7. Things do that, and sometimes they're intentional, sometimes they're not. On your screen right now, you were looking at Starship Super Heavy Booster 15 with Starship 34 on top of it at Tower 1 at Starbase, Texas, and the venting you see underneath that is from the tank farm, and we are about an hour and a half, in 1 hour 29 minutes to the opening of their launch window. And that allows SpaceX some wiggle room when it comes to these test flights. Sometimes they need to recheck something. Sometimes they need to top off something. Maybe a temperature is off, or a valve needs to be opened or closed, or they just go through their checks again methodically. This is a test flight, so they give themselves a window. So if it doesn't launch exactly in 90 minutes, that's okay. That's why in the upper left-hand corner of the screen, you see it says net 1 hour 29 and some change. That means no earlier than, and we do that so we're not giving you a T0 because you know what, they might push it into that window a little bit. Again, this is a test flight, and that is 100% expected for them to do. So let's talk about the status right now. Let's actually talk about Adrian. I'm going to bring you in on this conversation because you know you're watching the weather, you're watching the ship, you're watching all of this amazing support come in, and thank you guys so much for that. But right now, the status of this ship is we start to expect things to happen very rapidly as we get closer to that eventual T0 for this rocket.
Absolutely. I'm basically in a like field of monitors here at this point that is just in front of me, and I'm trying to spot anything that is going on. We are definitely inside of the window for where we would expect tower/pad vent, which again, Alex said earlier, they have a bit of a wiggle room. They also have a quick way to chill that down. There's like a quick path and a slower path to chill down. But we are getting there. It is all so far still looking good from what we can tell. I will not say anything about the weather I have been looking at because I know there's a person coming up way more qualified than me to talk about this. So I'm not going there. But active tank farm, which honestly is good. Like if at this point, if we arrived at T-minus 90 minutes and the tank farm would be dead silent, that would have been bad news. But we're not there. That's the good one here. And if you don't mind, I also quickly run some support here because I'm having some ones I really want to hit here. Starting with probably one of the hardest questions I've ever seen. Longest with a $100 super chat. Thank you so much first for that. And now here's the very hard question. What is your favorite space-oriented game? And
oh my.
I have the advantage of having thinking about this for the last 5 minutes. And I've come up with, I am only able to say the Mass Effect trilogy and Faster Than Light. That's my answer.
You want to go around the room? You want to go around the room,
Yeah.
EJ?
I think EJ,
favorite?
you have to like.
I like Star Wars X-Wing versus TIE Fighter. No,
Hey.
just kidding. No, that is a good game.
That's a
That is a
good
good
game.
game.
It's
To
a
be
good
fair, good game. Kerbal 1 is my number one.
Yeah,
guys, Kerbal 1 is the best.
That's
I love that.
That's where I was
video
going to
game.
go.
I do
There's
stream
more
it
like
over on
Kerbal
Twitch
1?
from time to time. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I played some Star Trek. Played almost every Star Trek game there is, but yeah, when it comes to rocketry and space flight and physics and orbital dynamics and all that, Kerbal is it's a fantastic game. Alex, what were you saying?
I was making the joke that EJ said Kerbal 1. I was like, there's more than one. Anyways,
Yeah,
there is there is not. Okay, somebody actually mentioned this in chat. There's this game, Ratchet and Clank, I think it is. I love that as a kid. Shout out to whoever said that in chat. I already lost it, but I loved that game when I was a kid. I've played Orbiter Flight Simulator as well. I like that. Apart from it's more like an advanced version of Kerbal, and you have real life rockets, although you cannot play with them. Unfortunately, you cannot do mods stuff and and build your own rocket, but you can fly real rockets, which is nice. Yeah.
If we're talking about games when we were kids, I'm going to date myself because I go back to the Moon Patrol days. You guys are way too young to know what Moon Patrol is. That was a lot of fun. Come on, chat. Anybody my age in Moon Patrol time? Yes, thank you. Galaga. Galaga is absolutely my favorite game, but we're getting off topic. We're going to talk about this rocket that we actually can't see out here. Go ahead, Adrian.
Let's go back to Starship.
I have something very on topic I'm about to bring up here, and that is that the roadblock, which was still at the closer checkpoint, has just started to move back to the further out roadblock, which usually they do. There you can see it. It's completely empty, and that does not mean the road is open. The road is absolutely not open. What they are doing is they're moving it further back because they are about to commence into the deep stages of what will end up prop loading. So even the police the sheriffs will take a bit of a further away position here.
And that's all good news going toward an eventual T0. We are about an hour and 24 minutes from the opening of the launch window. So you start to see those things that kind of give us indicators that SpaceX is proceeding with the launch. And we are going to get a weather update here in just a minute. But one of the things that we look for as we look back at Starship 34 up there on the tower are these vents. We'll start to see venting from different places. And they kind of give us an indication of where they are within their countdown and where in that window SpaceX is looking to launch the ship. Alex, you wanted to say something about that?
No, I was agreeing with you that you are indeed correct with
I got something
the
right.
vents and everything.
EJ,
congratulations!
I got something right.
Look at you!
Hey, I intercede when I think something is off, right? So I also need to say something when I agree with you.
That's a great shot of the tower on the left there. That's a really nice close-up shot. You can see the piping on the left side. You'll see that start to get white when they start to move those propellants up and down.
There's
also, guys,
there's a vent there.
Yeah, Alex. I mean, yeah, that's cool. I'm looking at the monitor up close, guys. I always wanted to try to look at tell people the scale of this. Now, obviously, the best way is to come down here and see it. But if you want to understand the scale, and you look at the left side of your screen, right? We got a shot of the tower there. Look at the stairs. Look at the staircase. Those are flights of stairs right there. That should tell you how big this thing actually is. It is a monster of a piece of equipment here. The rocket and the tower. I would say, look at those stairs. From those stairs, you can really kind of get the scale. You can get how big one of these things is. Just look at the flights of stairs. They're right there.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Can you imagine the elevator breaks and you got to go up those stairs?
Oh no,
no, that's a lot of stairs.
Hard to have.
I mean,
My
granted,
knees.
you're at work, so if your job is to go up that, then your job's to go up that. Later on, we are going to talk about that, the size of the ship. We talked about the propellant and about, what is it, 5,000 tons of fuel, Alex, that approximately go into it. But we are gonna show you some comparisons later on about how tall this ship is. And remember, this is block 2 of the ship, block 1 of the booster. And I wanted to talk about the future of the booster. Alex, I'll bring you into this conversation while we're waiting to see some of these events get more active. When they added the hot stage ring, EJ and I talked about the hot stage ring and why they did that. They're going to integrate that. The plan is to integrate that on future versions of. And by the way, for those of you who don't know, this is a 2-stage vehicle. The upper stage is called the Starship. The booster down at the bottom, we call that the super heavy booster. So the at the top of the ship that you're seeing now, that is the block 2, or the second variation of the ship, which is a little taller, a little more fuel in there. And then down at the bottom is the original block 1, not the original block 1, but one of the latest version of the block 1. And Alex, as we go through and into block 2, potentially block 3 and beyond, what changes are we looking for as we go forward?
Well, one of the main changes that we're going to see is they're going to stretch both vehicles, right? Block 2 of the ship is already a ring taller, and it contains 25% more propellant on board. That is not just because of the extra ring, but also because of other optimizations in the tank volume, and also shortening the size of the payload bay section. It doesn't mean that there's less payload volume available, because they also did optimizations on the nose cone area, so they can use more of the nose cone now as well. Many of the other things that we're going to see is optimizations for reuse. So, for example, there's not going to be all of those very pesky engine shielding and everything that they needed to install. There's going to be a lot of reductions in mass. There's going to be a lot of things that are going to be improved in that area. But as you mentioned, one of the things that they're going to do is they're going to integrate that structure of the hot staging interface. So instead of being a separate ring that they need to install, it's going to be just part of the vehicle structure of the booster. In the renders that SpaceX published last year, it looked more like the Soyuz hot staging interface, right? Which is like a truss kind of pipe section that just leaves a lot of room for that exhaust to escape. One of the things that we don't know, though, is how are they going to address things as simple as, well, what's going to happen with the top of the booster, right? Because it's going to get blasted by those engines. Sure, you have the vents and everything, but you still need some kind of protection. So we don't know how that is going to look like. We're definitely on the lookout for any sort of block 2 booster material out there at the production site. Always peering through those windows on the Star Factory, trying to see if we can spot something along those lines. So far, nothing that really screams, "Ooh, I am an interstage interface" or something like that, right? Like there's nothing as such right now that we've seen, but we'll be keeping an eye, and we'll see how that looks like, from render to actual metal physical thing.
And if you want to keep up with all of the goings on at Starbase with the Starship program, you can watch Starbase Live, one of our 3 live cameras here at NSF. We also have Space Coast Live if you're interested in those launches from the Cape, and also McGregor Live when they do rocket testing. You can tune into those on YouTube. And especially here at Starbase, there are folks in the field with their cameras, and they come out here several times a day. We do Starbase updates. And we have what we call dailies, but they're usually a couple times a week, where we give you the updates in snippet form, and it's voiceover, or you can just listen to the ambient noise. And earlier in some of the shots, you could hear in the background some of the ambient noises, the pressure being released and things like that. So we listen for those. We watch specific things on the video.
Welcome to a moment of calmness from One A Day. Wait. Don't zone out yet. One A Day multivitamins help provide nutritional support for your well-being as part of a healthy lifestyle. So whether you're navigating a busy day or seeking quiet reflection, One A Day vitamins are here for you. Choose clarity, choose wellness. Choose One A Day multivitamins. Science that matters for nutritional support. Grab your One A Day vitamins at your favorite retailer today.
On top of the chopsticks, there's the little bumpers that come down, right? And they've worked on those. They figured these things out. And when we saw in past flights, when the booster came down to be caught, it actually doesn't land on the chopsticks. That's what we call those arms themselves, but it hits those bumpers. Now, if it's under its own power and it's kind of, I don't want to say hovering because it's close. Why do we need those bumpers?
So those bumpers are there to dissipate the load. You don't want to shock load the chopsticks because they'll snap right off. Basically, when the engine shuts down, the full weight of the booster is going to be on those chopsticks. And if you can find a way to not do that quickly, right, you're going to not snap your chopsticks off, right? So those kind of catch rails, those bumpers are up there to basically dampen out the load that's exerted from the weight of the booster from the engine shutting off. Because obviously, the rocket engine's firing. You said it's not hovering. It's kind of not. But the rocket engine's firing. The force from getting put out from that rocket engine is enough to, keep the booster basically hovering, right? I mean, it's not hovering. It gets close, but it's not. But basically, if they just, you got to shut the rocket engine off quick, right? It has to be shut off fast, right? You can't you could throttle down the rocket engine, but you can't like get it down to like 2% throttle. This isn't KSP as much as I want it to be, right? So what you do with these things, what they do is because you have to shut that rocket engine off fast. You have to find a way to not just have the full force of that booster just push right down on those chopsticks. So the bumper pads that are up there are there to dampen out the force. They're basically like a shock absorber to prevent all of the weight from super heavy all at the same time being exerted on the chopsticks there. Now, keep in mind, like the chopsticks are hydraulically actuated, right? So basically when super heavy lands on these things, they're going to want to push out. They want to push out and away. So it's not just about straight up loading the chopsticks. It's about making sure they don't shoot out to the sides. And those hydraulics are under insane amounts of pressure. Like, I don't know if you've seen the hydraulic actuators. They're like the size of my truck to move those chopsticks back and forth. When super heavy lands on these things, you got to dampen out the force. And you got to dampen out up and down. You also got to dampen out left and right. So those bumpers actually kind of move a little bit out. Not a little bit out. It's kind of the actuation mechanism kind of makes them move like down-ish a bit. Like they don't really move out too much but once again, they're there to basically make sure those sticks don't snap off. And they're there to make sure the sticks don't push out either.
And once it captures the super heavy booster, it comes in between and kind of catches them on the little pins that stick out from the side of the booster, which you can see on some of our closer cameras. You can see the pins that stick out on the side of the super heavy booster, which of course they're testing similar pins on Starship on this flight for re-entry purposes. They're not structural. We keep saying that. On the next one, they should be structural if they decide to go for a launch. But then what they do is they safe the booster. And Alex, you want to answer that one? What that looks like when a booster comes back, it gets caught by the tower, and then it goes through that process where they safe the booster. What exactly are they doing to make that vehicle safe, and then they can put it back down on the launch mount?
Yeah, one of the things that they do, for example, is so as you mentioned, they put it back on the launch mount, then they connect the booster quick disconnect, right? It's kind of a funny reference that I just said quick disconnect, but they do. They connect those umbilicals to the booster, and they are able to sort of drain back whatever is left inside of the vehicle, right? And that is a good thing because then they are able to get. For example, even the COPVs that store the high pressure gases and whatnot, they can drain them back and things like that. They can save the vehicle. One of the other things that they do, well, after it's already detanked and everything and the pad is open, they also remove the flight termination system charges, which they should be disabled electronically because they have, once it goes through re-entry, you can hear the call out very clearly on the on their stream that they are, the FTS is being saved, right? So it's electronically saved, but you still need the physical assurance that it's not going to blow up now as you handle the booster. So you need to remove those charges. That's what they did last time around, and so they get rid of all of that.
We are currently 1 hour, 12 minutes, 13 minutes if you don't count the seconds, to the opening of the launch window. And I want to talk a little bit about that. I talked about earlier why they do that launch window, why it's not just an instantaneous, okay, we know what time we go. There's a lot of things going on in the background. Every time they launch one of these ships, it's basically a new ship. It might look the same as the last one, but it has so many different modifications that they change their checklists and their processes to go to launch almost every time. They're trying to shave a few seconds here. They're trying to verify a system there. And when they get to that point where they feel like, okay, guys, we've done this enough, we've got it down as slim as it can be, then they'll move to an operational phase. So it's very common to see a window open and then push the launch deeper into the window. So we're not overly concerned right now. We are about still over an hour away from the opening of the window. And then the window itself is about an hour. And we'll be looking for very specific things to happen in that timeline. And then we'll bring that timeline up and talk to you about it as we get closer. We're getting some more weather information that's coming in, and we'll bring Adam in here pretty soon. Not right now, but we'll talk to him about the weather. But I can't read what he keeps posting. He's posting some things about winds and lower level winds and things like that. And we talk about wind shear. And EJ, I'm going to bring you actually in on this conversation. We'll try to get Adam to talk about what's going on. And we can see the fog, right? We're not outside. We can't feel the wind. But when this vehicle launches, remember, this is a flying vehicle. So it gets all kinds of forces put on it during launch. What are those wind shears that we look for that the vehicle just can't really handle? I know you don't know the tolerances, but I mean, I'm talking about the science of wind shear almost.
Okay, so obviously you don't want to launch the rocket when it's too windy, right? You don't want it could actually blow it off course. That's absolutely a thing. If you have a rocket and you launch it when it's too windy, and this is kind of the reason why rockets have wind conditions, right? For instance, say the rocket can't steer, it can't steer. The thrust vector control systems on your rocket wouldn't be able to compensate for high wind. It'll blow it off course. Your control systems can't compensate for the wind. Well, guess what? The wind will put you wherever you're going to go. You're at the mercy of it, right? That's why rockets do have limits in the first place, right? So you have to worry about that happening down here near the surface. You have to worry about that happening up in the upper level winds, up in the upper parts of the atmosphere. Now, on top of all that, and once again, Adam could probably explain this better than I can. This is the cliff notes, right? It's not just the wind down here. It's not just the wind up there. It's the difference and the direction, right? The direction really makes a difference. If the wind is blowing east down here and it's blowing west up there, rockets don't generally like that because you're shifting the loads on the vehicle really, really quick. You got to remember, these upper level winds can get 100 miles an hour, 200 miles an hour, no problem. There's lower pressure up there. The air goes way faster, right? You get a lot down here. It's kind of a soupy atmosphere, to make another Kerbal reference right there, right? You got a kind of soupy atmosphere, like the wind. I mean, we can get pretty good sustained winds down here from like a hurricane or something, but generally, I mean, you're not launching a rocket in a hurricane, right? It's up there, the winds go a lot faster, and it's about the difference between up there and down here, right? If there's a big difference, you're going to have a big problem. And if, once again, the direction too, big deal. I mean, I want to be very clear. Adam can explain this better,
and he will,
way better than me, and he will. I just hope that when he says it, it was like, oh, EJ was wrong about this. I mean, he might. It's possible, but Adam can explain this better. But basically, it's the difference in winds. If you are launching a rocket and there's no wind down here and there's wind up there, you're running into what's called vertical wind shear. Once again, the change, and that breaks things. That breaks things really, really easily. Like you're putting rockets under unnecessary load at that point. And that's why you know what I was going to say. That's why we see some rockets launch the next day. No, I am not saying the S word. I'm not saying that. But that's why you do see some rockets just wait another day, because it might be nicer tomorrow. But it doesn't look too bad today. It's just very froggy.
Yeah. And that fog is making it difficult for us to see what's going on from our perspective, but we have cameras a lot closer. Alex, I'm going to bring you in on this one. And some of those cameras are showing us some other venting. Why don't you talk about what's going on?
Yeah, we have tower vent already underway. We are watching closely for the OLM vent, which should be next. Like it's usually within a minute or two of the tower vent. And that's the start of the chill down process. We've seen a lot of that venting on the tank farm. Now the lines that go from the tank farm out to the launch mount and the launch tower are being chilled down. I'm already seeing some of the frost on some of the propellant lines on the OLM, so maybe we're gonna get that OLM vent very, very soon. And so there you can see that tower vent already ongoing. That's gases oxygen leaving the tower there as they flow that liquid oxygen through the line up to the tower and getting all of that. Of course, they're also running liquid methane, but the liquid methane cannot be vented. So there's a return line that sort of comes back to the tank farm, and that's why we don't see that venting going on there. That's why this is for liquid oxygen. And so one of the other things that I am on the lookout for, though, is the timing. So this happened around T-minus 1 hour and 20 minutes for Flight 7. They're still optimizing the load of the vehicle, which also means optimizing all of these chill down process. Does this mean, because we are obviously not T-minus 1 hour, 20 minutes, we're a little bit further into the countdown than that. Does that mean we're going to get a T0 a little bit into the window? Perhaps. We're not sure, right? But if it is, it's not by that much, because as I was saying before, it's only like maybe 10 minutes, 12 minutes, 13-minute time frame that we're seeing this change, and that could just come down to them optimizing the timelines and optimizing the processes. But if we do see, again, that difference is just of mere 10 minutes or so, they will have plenty of margin there. That window runs for 60 minutes, 1 hour long, right? So if it's just that, those 10 minutes or so of leeway that we've seen of difference compared to Flight 7, then they will have plenty of window. Of course, we're waiting on SpaceX, because one of the things that should have happened about 10 minutes ago, T-minus 1 hour and 15 minutes, the flight director executes that go, no-go poll sequence for propellant load. And so that is one of those things that SpaceX will need to confirm. I'm actually getting notifications. I think it's Chris B tweeting on our social media channels. But one of those things that I'm going to be also looking at is whether SpaceX confirms that or not. Usually they do. So I'm going to be on the lookout for that. I'm also going to keep watching all of our cameras and all of our feeds and everything for any more updates. But we're getting very close to that propellant load.
And that's good news. As they start to chill those lines down, we can kind of gauge now things are moving and still moving toward a potential launch here in just, I guess, over an hour and a half or so. We'll know more when we start to see, and we'll talk about that timeline in just a little bit. We're trying to get Adam, who's looking at the weather every second. He's probably getting the latest updates for us right now. So when he's available, we'll go to him. But Adrian, I want to come to you because it's been a while since we've gone through and thanked so many people that are generously helping us bring this coverage of Starship Flight 8. So why don't we thank a bunch of folks?
I will absolutely do that. I will quickly acknowledge the fact that the OLM vent has started. So to quickly wrap that up, the booster chill down has also started now. The booster system chill down, not the system chill down of the booster itself. And after that, I will thank some people here, starting with Chris Waiters, who give a $50 super chat here. With a message I will not fully read, but that shouts excitement for the launch today. We also have John James with gifting 10 Red Team memberships. Thank you so much for that. We have another 5 Red Team memberships from Go Flyer here. Thank you so much for that. Sean Flake with a $20 super chat saying that Starship Flight 8, you're cleared to the Western Australian coast as filled, and a bunch of others. I think this is a flight report, right? But you get from towers when you fly planes, right?
Flight level 2300. Wow, that's quite high up.
I mean, it is probably quite true, right? So
I will have to check because
Thank you so much for that as well. We have Waco with a super chat just saying good reporting. Well, thank you. Tactical Penguin with a super chat here saying, EJ, it ain't EJ quote, it ain't got no gas in it.
Ain't got no gas in it.
Hope you all got Jack's rear door working again. Thanks for the tank of gas.
Yeah. That's an inside story. We're not even going to go down that road.
Maybe later.
Okay, I will. So I will ask about the story after the stream, correct?
Yeah, we will. We can talk about that later.
Cool, thank you. David Ferguson with a super chat. Do you know if there's an electrical or communications connection between ship and booster? Alex, is there a direct connection line between ship and booster?
Unfortunately, we have not seen that yet. If there is, it doesn't seem that like there might be one, or at least it's not very obvious. On Falcon 9, there is. There's even connections between the side boosters on Falcon Heavy. But so far, we have not seen any direct connections between booster and ship.
Excellent questions, and thank you guys so much again. We can't do this without your support, so thank you for all of those tips and super chats and going out to our store and picking up shirts like we're wearing right now. All of it helps us, and it helps us with these cameras. Now, I will tell you that all of this money, the vast majority, they go out to the cameras. We're always upgrading cameras and connections and internet connections and things like that, so we can get just that much closer, just that much more zoom, that better connection and better quality video for you. And it's all because of you guys supporting us. On your screen right now, you can see obviously the tower vent. That is a big deal. That lower right-hand shot's actually really cool. What are we seeing, EJ? Or I might go to Alex since this is a propellant question. What are we seeing in that right-hand middle screen? Are those sub-chillers, condensers, valves, what propellers? What are we seeing there?
Those, so the black things on the right hand side, that's for Pad B. Those are part of the pump assemblies for Pad B. Not active today. That's going to be for Pad B, right? But in the future they'll be active, and it's not fully installed yet either. So we're not going to see any activity from that today. But as you can see, there's a bunch of other activity going on. There was an OLM there just a couple of minutes ago. I was actually going to point out, you can see the return line of the methane being frosty and whatnot. But yeah, the tank farm activity is blocked in that view right now. Of course, we have many other cameras, so thankfully those are not being blocked, and you can see lots of activity from the OLM, as you can see there from that south view. And yeah, that OLM vent going strong. We're gonna get much more activity from that. Like that vent becomes even more and more active as we count down to that propellant load. That vent will disappear at the time of liquid oxygen load on the booster, because that's, again, as I was saying before, it's related to the liquid oxygen venting, that chill down of that liquid oxygen line. So when the vent goes away, that's our sign that the liquid oxygen is being loaded onto the booster. For the tower, we're going to see a pause. So at some point, it's going to disappear. There's no need to be panicking or anything like that. Then it'll return. And once it returns, it becomes a lot more active. We see sort of like it's a cape coming out of that tower. It's amazing. It looks like a superhero kind of thing with the arms and everything, and the cape behind it, right? And once that huge vent essentially goes off and disappears, that's when we're going to get our sign that liquid oxygen will be loaded onto the ship. So that's more or less the behavior of these vents that we've already seen in the past few launches.
And, it's frustrating for us because we look out the window here from the Margaritaville Resort and we see the fog. We can't actually see it. So thank you, NSF, for all these great camera views and these close-up cameras. So we're going to talk about the weather because we're watching it just like you're watching it on YouTube and also on Popular Science Channel. We're watching it the same way because we look out the window. All we see is a gray, foggy sky. We're going to bring in our NSF meteorologist who's going to talk us through the current weather for this Starship Flight 8, Adam Suker. Adam, come on in.
Hi, yes. Everybody wants to know what the weather's going to be doing. We're just under, an hour away. So one thing that we have been watching very closely is an area of clouds that has moved in. I was explaining that earlier, that we'd probably have around 70% cloud covered around the 5:30 launch window. I was guessing if they were right at the top of the launch window there. Now with this cloud graphic, if you notice, if you look just south there and just into the Gulf, you can see there is clearing that is slowly working its way up towards the South Texas region. The only thing is that clearing, it looks nice out there right now where it's trying to like clear up a little bit, but there's a little bit thicker clouds that's going to come in right about the start window around 5:30. If they were to hold off a little bit longer, say we try to get a little closer to the last of the window, closer to that 6:30 mark, we could actually see that clearing come through. So depending on the exact time of launch will depend on how the clouds are going to act for us. So if it's at the start of the window, expect to see clouds, those kind of mid-layer clouds that are come over. If we're toward the end of the window, we could actually see some clearing come up just in time. Something the models didn't pick up very well on, except for that 5:30 window, we were expecting to see some cloud coverage. So now everybody's been talking too about the foggy haze look. So what that is, if you can go to the next graphic that I posted. So basically what's happening is where I have a little, I believe it's a red arrow. Yes, the red arrow that's pointing. That's a temperature inversion. So basically that's showing a temperature rising as you go up just a little above 1 kilometer, about 4,000 feet up. That right there is a temperature inversion. So that is heat aloft, and that heat kind of suppresses a lot of stuff, and it also will suppress sound to make sound waves a little bit louder at the surface. With that being said, with the southeast wind coming off the Gulf, you're getting like that sea mist and a lot of particulates that are staying trapped, down in that first couple thousand feet. So you're getting that real hazy, foggy look. And because of that and those mid-layer clouds that are right there at the same level, you're getting that visibility that's not very good unless you're closer. If you were more inland and not looking straight down the ocean, so say someone was probably looking from basically straight inland and not perpendicular with the ocean, it would actually be a little bit clearer than trying to look down the ocean where you got all that sea mist kind of coming in and that salt. With the winds, though, that's one biggest watch item that we've been watching. So what I have circled there in blue, think of that as going up from the surface, and the rockets going upwards as you go up on the graphic. You see that the winds start off, it's pointing southeast. That means the winds are coming out of the southeast. And then as you go up, they start turning western. Well, that's called directional shear. Well, that lowest level is very important for the ship, the rocket ship, as it's launching. You don't want these winds headed all different directions as it's going up in a short amount of time. So it takes a lot of deviation to keep going up straight with that kind of wind. And you got to think about, if booster returns, it's also going to have to come back down into those winds and get pushed all around. So there is a limit, and they just got done. SpaceX launched 2 weather balloons because, like I was saying earlier today, the forecast models are just a model. It's a guess of what the winds can be. They launched 2 weather balloons. Right now, their meteorologists are going over the fine line because I have to admit, the surface winds have been a few miles an hour higher than we originally anticipated. They've actually blown up to 30 miles an hour now at some of the reporting sites. So now their meteorologists are gathering this data. They're making sure that this can still be within safe levels before they give that go for weather. So this is still going to be, it could be right there close to the limit or just a little bit below. So once their meteorologists grab all that data, they'll be able to really make that determination whether or not is it going to be safe enough to launch and criteria that they currently have. Back to y'all for any questions.
Well, we have a lot of questions, but I think you covered them all with that succinct update. Adam Suker, thank you so much. NSF meteorologist, keeping his eyes on the weather for us. And on your screen, you can see the tower vent in the lower right-hand corner, and then you can see what we call the OLM vent in that middle shot. A close-up on the left there has been vented out. It's with the vapors, and then upper right-hand corner, you see the Starship getting ready for potentially its 8th test flight. Now, I see some things in the YouTube chat, and I appreciate everybody putting some stuff in there. The counter in the upper left-hand corner is not an official T0. I want to stress this, that NET stands for no earlier than or not earlier than. So we are waiting for an official T0, and we kind of know when things happen in the countdown. So please, when you look at that clock, that is the opening of the launch window. That is not rocket go boom, rocket go space. That is the opening of the launch window, and folks in the control room are going through their final checks. They're going through their go no goes. They're looking at the rocket. They're looking at all the sensors that are built into it, and they're making sure that everything is within their flight tolerances, as Adam said. They're also looking at the weather. They're looking at what's going to happen, at 1,000 feet, 10,000 feet, etc. They're also looking at the weather in the Indian Ocean when this ship is supposed to come back into reentry through peak heating and then splash down at a very, very precise point in the Indian Ocean. And let's talk about that, EJ. Let's talk about that reentry and then that landing. Why do they have to be so precise? Obviously, this is a test flight, so the reason for this is they're pulling data. They want as much data from this. Why are they trying to get the Starship on its flip and burn maneuver when it comes in? Why so precise?
Well, the short answer is that they're going to eventually try to land one of these things, Gene. They got to bring it back to the chopsticks. So if it's not precise enough to get near the chopsticks, when you're trying to not land near the chopsticks, like on these test flights, if they can't get it precise enough to get the fidelity that they need to get that thing landed on a future flight, you're going to have some problems. Something that gets thrown around in the aerospace industry a lot is test as you fly. So basically just test as you fly, right?
In the Army, we used to say train like you fight.
Train like you fight.
Yeah,
there you go.
right.
Same thing. Every one of these landings that they do with these Starships when it comes down off the coast of Western Australia, every one of these is a practice. It's a practice for when they go to do the real thing. So when they seemingly do go to do, or not seemingly, when they do go to do the real thing, hopefully we see a ship catch on the next flight. I mean, it doesn't know. It really kind of is contingent on how good this one goes, right? When we do see one happening in the future, they'll already have some data on it. They'll already know how to do it. We saw the exact same thing happen with the booster during Flight 5. Flight 4 did the water landing, right? And that water landing was basically, there were fake catch arms out here. At least the booster thought there were catch arms out there. And it landed with sub-centimeter precision per SpaceX. And then when Flight 5 came around, they got it. That thing got caught on the first try, seemingly on the first try. Or was it? Right? It wasn't, right? They were testing it. So these ships, when they do these missions, these suborbital missions, they got to come down precisely, because that's all paving the way for when they eventually go do a ship catch. Hopefully on the next flight. Hopefully, could be as early as that. We don't know. Once again, it depends on how good this flight is, but we'll see.
Yeah, and we will see. Hopefully here at inside that 1 hour window that opens up in just right at 51 minutes. Something that we do here at NSF is when you support us, we love the fact that you get something in return. So when you help us put a new camera out, or have a photographer, or have these live broadcasts where all of this stuff costs money, that's support that you give us that comes back to you. But also, we have a store, and we love you're wearing a Flight 7 shirt. I'm wearing one of our Thrust collection shirts, and there on your screen you can go out to shop.nasaspaceflight.com and you can check out all of the shirts that are available, the hoodies, and right now you can pre-order your Flight 8 patch. And as Adrian said earlier today, they are about halfway gone already, and they were announced last night when the full stack happened.
Wow.
Isn't that incredible?
That's pretty crazy. Thank you
guys so much for going out there and helping us. Shop.nasaspaceflight.com. You can get stickers, you can get the patches, you can get the shirt, the hoodies, and something new. Look at that beautiful patch on the screen right now. That's amazing. One of the things that just came out as well last week was the tote bag that has the pattern of the thermal protection tiles on it. So if you want, we got to come up with a good name, like thermal tote bag or tote protection system or something. What's a good name for the tote bag? I'm gonna send it to Adrian here in a second.
Fully reusable, rapidly reusable grocery bag.
Oh, tote bag. I like that. Yeah. Rapidly reusable tote bag.
Rapidly reusable.
I'm renaming that right now. Starship DPS.
Yes.
Fully reusable.
Nice. Real time. Happening in real time.
You heard it here first.
But something else that helps us out. Something else that helps us out, doesn't cost anything. It's just hit the thumbs up. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors. We love what we do. We are not a big media organization, as you hear Doss or say all the time. We're just a group of friends that love doing this. And this is just, we just come and we nerd out and we have a good time doing it. And I mean, you flew in, I drove in. We have people coming in from all over. They drive in with their cameras. I was talking with Jack the other day about some of the cameras that he rents with his own money so that he can do this. And that's really what NSF is. It's a group of friends that bring you these launches from literally around the world. So thank you for supporting us, and we love that you're here. Coming into our flight, potential Flight 8 launch here. The window opens in about 48 minutes. And I forgot what was the other thing I was going to talk about. Help me out here, EJ. I had it in my head, and then it went away. Oh, that's right. Our socials. That's what I was going to talk about.
Yeah, you're welcome. I helped.
Thank you. I was like, what was that? I had it in my head. Thank you. All of our socials are available as well. Follow us on Facebook, on Instagram, on X, on what's the Blue Sky? What's it called? Blue Sky?
It's called Blue Sky.
Okay, I got that one. Yeah, we are everywhere, and all of that support helps us as well. So thank you very much. I got a lot of things going on as we try to keep going here. Hey, Alex, I'm gonna bring you in. How long does that OLM vent normally take?
Well, not much, but I have breaking news.
Oh,
no. Not directly related to today's launch, but oh man, we're getting some juicy information from SpaceX on future Starship operations at the Space Coast. That's a render of the Giga Bay at Roberts Road in the Kennedy Space Center. You know, if you're a regular of the channel here at NSF and you watch our Space Coast updates and whatnot, those flyovers that we do, you may know a bunch of these things. The Giga Bay in Florida will stand 380 feet tall and provide approximately 46.5 million cubic feet of interior processing space with 815,000 square feet of workspace, including ground level, elevated platform work areas, and a work and meeting space on the top floor. Giga Bay will be able to support a Starship and Super Heavy vehicles up to 81 meters tall and will provide 24